Well, hello and welcome to the show. Today in the studio, I've got Mr. John Wren,
Hello.
artist. So we were here discussing the correct way to introduce a man that does painting, because I like to tell people that I do colouring in when they ask me what I do. But mate, you actually do some colouring in.
Yeah, I've got my crayons. I've
your
got
crayons?
my brushes.
Yes.
I've got my little drawing pad. It's how I survive, how I eat.
And what a wonderful way to eat. And this all came about because you put on an exhibition here in Brisbane, and that exhibition is currently on, isn't it? Like
Correct.
Right now, this minute.
Yes.
If you are listening, I don't even know what day it is. Late October, is it? No, November. Where are we? I don't even know where we are in time.
It's one of those days that ends in Y.
Yeah, definitely. But right now, if you check the show notes, it'll probably make better sense. I came along as a guest to your opening night because I've been following your artwork on the internet, and we first met a few lifetimes ago at school, and I've always enjoyed people that like to make things for a living, because that's kind of my jam. And there was something about your artwork that I just always really enjoyed, and I've always followed along. And then when I got an invite to come and see the things in person, I'm like, how good's this? And I went, you know what, you should probably come in and talk to me on my little Talking About Stuff show, because I would love to hear the story of how we got here.
Well, to be honest too, it's been great to see your career kind of weave and intertwine into the Brisbane landscape. So, stemming back from that little school, it's been quite fun to watch actually Brisbane evolve as well.
It's really funny because this was last Thursday night. I turned up and there were a heap of blokes there that went to school together. And these are guys I haven't seen, how old are we? We're mid-40s now. I haven't seen most of these blokes since I was a teenager. And that's hilarious.
Well, I think my favourite part about that, though, too, is it was one of those years which didn't rate quite well on the intelligence gamut that was coming through OP scores. So, oddly enough, that has turned into probably one of the most successful years, I think, in the history of the school.
Really?
Yeah.
You got any facts to back that up, or is that just the vibe?
Oh, look, there's you and me sitting here.
Well, that's two out of... Yeah,
Drinking a bottle of Coles water.
yeah mate, only the finest for my guests. I have very little to offer, and then I brought myself a can of rocket fuel and not enough to offer somebody else. The Scotch bottle's empty. It's it's slim pickings around here.
Oh, look, the old monster doesn't go down too well anymore. But no, I think we were fortunate enough to actually grow up in an environment there that had some very interesting and intriguing personalities.
Very unique individuals.
Yeah, and very driven too. So I think that's probably what separated us from a lot of other people there too.
Big bit to prove, because I must say, mate, I was out the arse end of the bell curve, and it turns out that, you sort of came out in the same place.
Yeah.
And that's an interesting place to start the game from, when, on the rating scale of all the people that have just finished grade 12, and you're effectively told when you're 17 years old that this will dictate the rest of your life based on how well you've done here. And, don't think that's quite right. Throw it out there.
Oh, I think when you're being told that you're starting at a lower point, it's easy to achieve things sometimes.
Absolutely. Because they're like, you're a fucking moron, was the broad strokes of, what my friends would tell me. So, if I could construct a sentence or do anything, that sort of held together, that was a real achievement.
Yeah, well, there was a period there where I was on Velcro shoes because the laces were getting a bit too much for me. So, anyway.
I sympathise with that, mate. Yeah. Come on, look at what I roll in these days. And slip-ons for sure. I don't do bloody laces. That's just dumb. That's inefficient.
They'll float away in the high tide.
But that was part of the challenge of... I certainly found, I was not highly engaged in education. It really didn't... Most of it didn't vibe with me. And again, as I've discovered more recently in life, that is the neurodiverse brain. It wasn't that I didn't understand, it was that I actually couldn't. It wasn't that I wasn't trying, it just doesn't make any sense to me. And you can try and shove that information in there all you like, but unless I'm engaged, it won't go in.
Yeah, but I with that though too, I think when you can't learn a particular way, I think your brain has to evolve to learn other aspects of how you can actually fit into that surrounding. So while the skill structure probably, it's still stemming from the Industrial Revolution where it's absorb, repeat, and when you've got a brain that's going a little bit quicker, sometimes it might not be in the right race.
And that was the big challenge, was the having to like write things down and memorize them. That just didn't gel.
Well, not when they're boring as well.
Well, they were particularly boring. The only thing I ever really, really enjoyed was modern history. I actually really enjoyed that because you were learning things that were fascinating. And actually, as I think about it, as I say it out loud, it's the why. I really enjoyed as they would map together going, this thing happened, and then this thing happened, and then that's why this thing happened, and they'd link points in time together. I'm like, oh, wow, that's actually really incredible.
Yeah, and that and kind of liking it, how potentially it could actually work in like now time, too. Because everything really has been done before, I'm guessing.
And everything's the same. And this is the funniest thing, is delivery is different, and the general roundabouts is different, but everything's the same. I think I read somewhere that everything operates in like 20-year blocks, and then 80 years it resets again, because that's your 20 years is basically the extent of each generation that moves the needle, and then 80 years is a total reset. So
interesting.
Yeah, and I went, that actually makes a lot of sense, which is why we just keep seeing the same themes.
Yeah, I definitely gels. Yeah.
And makes sense as to why flares coming back again. I've been really enjoying that. Like the 90s are fashionable again, and I'm watching people wear stuff now that I was rocking in like 92. And I'm like, mate, I've been waiting for this to come back.
Well, mate, I also feel like you're partly responsible for that though too. Like you've been holding the torch there for quite a while.
Mate, I'm doing my best. I've been buying things from Rusty as well. That was, mate, if No Fear comes back, remember that one? Mate, they were banging. That was,
Achievable goals, I think. Achievable goals.
Really achievable goals. But you actually, if I recall correctly, and here's a bizarre one, did you do a bit of photography? Did you get in on that back in
school? Yeah,
in school,
yeah, in the old dark room with the film.
Yeah,
that was a lot of fun actually.
Yeah, because I remember you doing that, and I was envious because my mum and dad were like, no, you can't do that, mate. Like this is not a real job. You can't do this at school. And I remember watching people learn it, and I'm like, man, I just want to learn that.
Oh, it was great. Like playing with the chemicals, and I didn't really have the patience to wait. So through that development process, I'd tend to pull them out and try and get them to work quicker. But sometimes you just got to follow the rules, don't you?
Well, that's annoying. But did you have some cool outcomes because you just ripped them out and did it?
To be honest, I probably gravitated more towards making a mess with a paintbrush and the clay side of things. The structure involved with the photography, I really struggled with.
Too many rules.
Oh, too many rules, yeah. Put it in there for 2 minutes or 3, I couldn't even remember now. But there was a lot of solutions, and the dark and that red light, and the results were fun. Just not quite getting there. Yeah.
Too hard.
Yeah.
So led towards, because I was really fascinated. We've obviously been chatting for a little while before we went on here. And I was really fascinated that art was something that spoke to you always, I guess. Like you were just making stuff.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I had quite a fun upbringing. My mother was an old country girl, so she was somewhat adverse to television, so we were always in the garden playing with things or painting or pulling something apart. A good memory was going down Old Cleveland Road. This is back when it was a 4-lane. I think it's now like a 6-lane number. And there was a half-squashed turtle in the middle of the road in the middle of summer on the way home from school in peak-hour traffic. And it was in the right-hand lane, so she stopped the car and told me to get out and pick up this bloody turtle. And all we had was a Coles shopping bag, and I had to sit in the front seat with this half-rotted, smelling turtle. But the only reason to do that was to take it home, let it rot, at the back door so we could then pull it apart and put the bones back together. So my upbringing was always finding out how something worked, how you could pull it apart, put it back together. Not so much book sense, but it was a very interesting way to see the world from a structural perspective.
Learn by doing.
Yeah, but I still can remember that smell though too, just sitting in the front of the Land Cruiser.
Wouldn't have been great.
Oh mate, it was one of those ones that had the bench seat off to the left with the passenger, so you had two seats there, and I just had this juice coming down my legs, and she's going, mate, don't worry about it. We'll just wash it off when we get home. It's only a bit of turtle. But
so,
anyway,
yeah. So she came off a farm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Where you just deal with things.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. Absolutely.
Because that's not the thinking of most people that'd be travelling down Old Cleveland Road. I'll throw it out there.
No, she sort of as a necessity to see how life actually worked. But it was strange when you go to primary school and have to tell these stories of picking up a turtle or culling the chickens, because one of them was pecking my brother in the face. So I was the axe boy back then.
Jesus.
But anyway, I digress.
But and this is the funny thing, the difference between people who grow up in a city or grow up in the country, where they actually face harsh realities of life and not the cling-wrapped, vacuum-sealed version that we receive here.
Well, I just remember the frozen chicken sandwiches we get at school. You'd know when you weren't eating the Coles chook, and I loved the Coles chook because it was beautiful white flesh, big chunky meat that you could bite in one go, and our chooks were weird chooks, dirty, very gamey tasting. There wasn't enough mayonnaise in the world to make them taste right.
Wouldn't bring them round.
Oh, mate.
Whereas, mate, whatever those hormones and chemicals are...
Oh, they work. Keep pumping them.
And see, this is the joy of meandering conversation. We digress. It's kind of my favourite part. Making stuff with clay. Because this was the bit here, because you were talking before about the fact that, we're sort of encouraged to go and figure things out once you're kicked out into the real world. And, mate, you applied to follow art.
Yes, yeah.
That was the goal. You actually went for it.
Yeah, well, it's the only subject that I felt like I had any grounds to succeed in. But being that I wasn't book smart, I wasn't allowed into university. So I went out on my own and began sculpting. So I'd trade a case of beer with the local boilermakers to create busts or fish or coffee tables, and was selling them through different avenues. And had a decent amount of success with it at the time. But in that era of my life, I thought that to be a successful artist meant that you had to have a raging drug and alcohol love affair. And I'd got myself into a position where I was about 55 kilos. And for those listening out there, I'm 6 foot tall, so 55 kilos was looking pretty lean on me. And then had to pull up stumps and try and get myself a bit healthier. Not that I had a huge problem, but I'm sure people out there can understand. And went from there into personal training, then became a hairdresser, and followed that path to the dizzying heights of mediocrity.
And see, this is great. Like, I just love this story because none of it makes any sense. Like, you dead set lost your FedEx and just went in every direction. And I think this is fantastic. And where I want to backpedal up to is you decided that you wanted to make metal stick to other metal and shape things. How the hell did that even start?
We had a shed, we had a stick welder. I worked out that $24 worth of beer could get me a lot of metal out of the dumpster at a fitter and turner's establishment. And I enjoyed the sound, the instantaneous ability of being able to tack two pieces of heavy metal together. And with time and learning how to do it, you could create something quite rapidly. And that sense of satisfaction of physically being able to make something in a short window of time, I don't think you can really kind of beat that, to be honest. That's what was kind of driving that.
It's astonishingly, it is, and it's fascinating. And what I really want to do is I actually want to keep pulling this thread.
Yeah.
So, how did it even start? How did you even find a boilermaker that was willing to trade beer? You know, there's a whole lot of questions here that I have that I don't even understand. That, you know, as an 18-year-old, I'm assuming, give or take, that you're actually putting these things together and going, and, you know, mate, I was doing nothing of any value at about that time. I'm fascinated as to how you sort of put all these bits and pieces together.
Well, I guess kind of blindly walking through life. I was one of those kids who came out of school. My first car was a Ford XY station wagon with the wind down window at the back. Loved that car. 3 on the tree. Yeah, very easy to throw your foot on the brake and light up one of the rear wheels. My dream at that point was to go down to Summer Nats. Never made it. Don't actually think I would have survived it. But that avenue then led me into working as a fitter and turner's assistant. And then I realised, hang on, I need to work out how to practice how to, you know, these skills to potentially become a fitter and turner long term. And it was a hell of a lot of fun. But yeah, Queensland is not designed for boilermakers or fitter and turners. Like in those sheds, you're looking at like 90 degrees and just hot, loud. And yeah, so I thought, might as well make something pretty. And that's how it kind of evolved.
And see, that is a terrific story, and that all makes a lot more sense. Now, again, you got to dumb it down for me here. So a fitter and turner does what?
Fitter and turner, like you get a lot of that on excavator or metal fabrication. So your mobile phone brackets, those we were installing those. So I'd be hanging off the side of the building with an impact drill, you know, boring holes into the wall. I was the kicker, so I'd be the one running around pulling up stuff for someone else to do everything for. But yeah, like a lot of respect for those guys. They work bloody hard. I'm a bit too delicate to choose that as a life choice, but like it's serious work.
That is proper hard work, but that gave you the fundamentals of how to make those things work.
Yeah.
And then that also introduced you to the scrap bin.
Yeah, love the scrap bin.
How good's the scrap bin?
Oh, mate.
Can I tell you a funny story? One of my mates does similar things, and I'm actually working with him on attacking the scrap bin at the moment. He was sending me photos of it the other day because I'm looking for bits of metal to stick with other bits of metal for all my side projects. I really enjoyed the scrap bin at the metal shop.
Oh, mate. It is just a little treasure trove.
It is a treasure trove. Yeah. His problem is that people come and steal the stuff to try and on-sell it. And he said, look, I've got to be honest with you. The last people that got in there, he said, I'm not even mad. I'm impressed. I really made it hard. And he said they got in there, they pinched the stuff, they did it cool as you like and just drove out. And I'm like, can't even be upset with him. But now he, uses one of the lifts to like throw a proper piece on top.
Oh,
so
right.
Good luck.
Yeah, no, this is going back a long. Like, these were all open air things, but I was honest. I'd trade my beer,
and that's very reasonable. I reckon that if the thieves left a carton of beers at the front door, you'd be way less annoyed.
Well, you got to pick your time. Friday afternoon around 2:00, go in there with your beer. Every single scrap bin will be open for you
every time.
Yeah.
See, there's pro tips for metal hunting. I like that.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun actually. So, yeah.
Oh, that is terrific. But see, then you started making, because you're explaining to me, and could you tell me the style of things that you were making?
Through the sculpting? So the bits that I were picking were triangular pieces or L-shaped bar that was then cut, would then bend. So they almost look like ribs or skeleton structures. So using those, I would create either, mostly it was actually sea life, so fish, seahorses. I did do a few busts as well, But I then pair that up with a piece of sandstone and create a coffee table, so the fish would look like it was this skeleton swimming underneath a glass top coffee table. So they weighed a ton. So like once you got it in your house, it was in your house forever. And then the busts were a little bit different as well.
And what drew you to the sea life? What were you making? Is there a story there, or is that just because?
Initially, it was out of ease. So a fish shape and structure is essentially just a straight line, and then you wiggle it a bit. And the way that their ribs align, that's how it kind of evolved. And I'd pick up like old rusty chains as well and use them as the guts, so they'd be hanging out halfway through it. A few nails on the top. You'd have your spines or your blades. But that's how it all kind of came about, really.
Just made sense. You looked at the bits and you went, what can I make? And you went, hang on.
Looks like a fish.
That'll work.
Yeah. Bit easier than doing like a giraffe or something like that.
Fair bit easier. No, the fish shape actually makes sense that you could.
Yeah, a lot of fun. Like really good way to learn how to operate a stick or a MIG welder. Highly encourage it because at least you feel like you're doing something a bit more substantial rather than just running lines down two pieces of steel.
Which isn't that much fun and is surprisingly difficult.
Yeah.
Like, I can't. Well, I'm not laying dimes. There's nothing getting stacked at my joint. It's fucking spattering and oh, God.
But you were saying before, you're loving it though.
Mate, I do.
I think that's part of it.
Brings me enormous joy, but then immense frustration as I watch like weld porn things, and I'm like, oh yeah, this will be me feeding the TIG, and then so me trying to TIG weld is basically me getting the tungsten stuck, and then going back to the grinder to put another. That's me TIG welding at this point in time. I actually have my friend Christian taught me how, and there's a little tube over there on my little glory pot. All the fun bits and pieces. There's a bit of tube that is my first ever TIG weld on that piece of metal.
Yeah, well, TIG's more delicate again.
It is so delicate. Yeah. That's full blown art, and I watch him do it, and I watch him just there, the smooth motion, and like you're literally short-circuiting electricity and creating a fucking explosion and then melting metal with the volume of heat and then ever so delicately just lacing it together. Yeah. And I love the brutality and the violence of that moment and then making it beautiful. There's something about that just speaks to me.
Oh, I think it's fantastic. But you hear those stories, though, too, of guys being able to do the old cigarette foil, welding that together with a TIG. So, like, that's levelling up again. But I love how molten, instantaneous contact, you got something done.
Oh, it's incredible.
In seconds. Like I think that's the brilliance of it. Like, you're not wasting any time.
I really prefer it to working with timber too, actually. I really like working with metal. There's just something about it that's just...
Oh, yeah. But no, it's a hell of a lot of fun.
Mate, it's a hell of a lot of fun.
Make me think I need to get back into it.
Yeah, you're making me want to go and try and make a fish. If you see dodgy second-hand fish on Gumtree, it's probably me. Sorry, I'm way off topic again. What I was also interested was you had some commercial success, and you said that are those bits and pieces still kicking around? You got to backpedal through that too.
I believe they are, unless they've been dumpstered. I don't have any left from that era. I essentially flogged off everything that we had. But we're only looking at a window of time of about a year or so, so I didn't actually produce that much.
Well, you did a hell of a lot because you got to explain to the people listening where some of your pieces ended up in the Brisbane.
Yeah, well, it progressed quite rapidly, to be honest. So I had some stuff in the Performing Arts Centre at one point, Mount Cootha. There was a grounds exhibition where they dedicated around the duck ponds. So it looked like a lot of these sea animals were swimming through the water. But that was, I just reminded me though, so because I was in that aided artistic mindset, I was having a nap waiting to get interviewed by Ranger Stacey. Remember Ranger Stacey from...
How could I forget?
Yeah, so she interviewed me and I was on kids' TV, not the kind of role model that you'd want at that particular time. I'm a much better person now.
You typified the artist in your mind.
I did.
At that point.
I did. We live and learn.
Oh, we do. You don't have all the answers out of the gates.
No.
You've come to discover.
No. It's baby steps. But my baby steps just took a little bit longer.
They do that, mate. They do that. Somebody said to me, the lesson will continue to present itself until it is learnt.
Yes. Yeah. Well,
I went, that's wise. Probably should have figured that out. If I stopped fucking stuff up a bit earlier, I go, not the sharpest tool in the shed, but that's all right. That's the matter. Makes for great stories, actually. Interviewed by Ranger Stacey, you're in the Performing Arts Centre, and you got stuff up at Mount Coot that we're gonna have to track down if any of that's still there. That's sensational.
Oh, look, if there's anyone out there who's still got something, it's probably worth a little bit more than what you paid for it.
Absolutely, I'll be interested.
That's if it's still standing.
Yeah, probably is though, mate. Sandstone and metal, like that's.
That was strong little buggers. Those things.
Bet that was strong.
Yeah.
That's incredible. Like that is a wonderful. Yeah, I love a good side story.
It was a nice little me kind of thumbing my nose back at the institution that rejected you.
Correct.
And it allowed me to think that potentially what is pre-schooled is not actually the right way to exist or kind of follow those channels. And I'm pleased they actually did reject me because where we're sitting now is I couldn't be happier.
Well, that's it. It's a direct result. And I laughed that my story is not dissimilar, where a series of rejections from the thing that I wanted to do actually helped me to do it. Whereas, if those doors had opened for me, it perhaps wouldn't have been what it's become because I had to fight so hard for it. It's really different. And I don't know. I'm shocked and really enjoying your story here, John, because obviously you made a few things. You lived the spicy artist lifestyle, and you sort of decided that the spicy artist lifestyle probably had a rapid expiration date.
Correct.
If you didn't sort your shit out. Tell me what happened next.
Well, a little bit similar to you. I got into health, so I had to get myself a bit healthier. So I started becoming a personal trainer, understood the body. That then led into realising that it wasn't the most fulfilling career in my life, lifting things up and putting it back down again. I do that at home all the time because I'm always reshuffling everything. So,
what about the early starts?
Oh, mate, I'm a morning person, but when someone else tells you have to be up, it's not the same. But I guess like a lot of people, they tell you hit the weekend, got to wake up with the sun, it's beautiful, but if you've got to do it for someone else, it's not fun.
It does take the joy out of it.
So did that for a number of years and then looked into hairdressing and that was a combination of thinking I was doing the right thing, choosing a safe career because hair always grows, mate. It doesn't stop growing and kind of working out how the human condition works. And you're a bit that way inclined though too, trying to work out what motivates people, how some people are charismatic, how others aren't, how you can actually kind of get along in this world and understand where you're sitting. So that was probably what I got most out of the hairdressing world.
And that there's a formula to it. And interestingly, it was like the coaching and training people because, and you would have been the same. I was a much younger man when I was doing that. And I was having to tell people older and more senior than me what to do. And so I had to develop a facade of confidence because I discovered if whatever you were saying, you said it like you believed it, then other people would too. And I was like, shit, eh?
Mm. Oh, it's so true. Like you say anything with enough conviction, anyone will believe it. Like Donald Trump's probably a good example of that.
Mate, got to be the king.
Wasn't me.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
look over there.
Yeah.
And then just pure abuse.
Yeah.
Tirades of abuse.
But it's it is a fascinating world. What's between everyone's ears and what motivates people. It is quite a drive to understand what the hell's going on, and I think that helps you understand what's going on between your own ears though too.
I think so too. And the other thing I found in like your personal training in the gym, that sort of stuff, is you're there with people and they're very vulnerable with you. And you have to be very sensitive to that because they're quite often seeing you at a time where they're not feeling great about themselves or they're not well or they're not, and they need to make a change. And they'll quite often share a lot of things with you going through that process. And that was certainly something that I found. I'm like, bloody hell. You become quite an integral part of people's lives as they're going through that journey.
Oh, yeah. Vulnerability, I think, is the glue that holds society together. I think once you acknowledge that everyone's fallible and you're fallible yourself, you become so much more relatable and hopefully likeable. But at the end of the day, I think that's all kind of working out how the mechanics of how people work.
The fact that nobody has it figured out, that was the big one.
Oh, yeah.
That was a big one for me because I'd look at people and go, mate, how do they have it all together? And then you get there and you're like,
Yeah.
Most people are just a walking shit show.
Yeah. Smoke and mirrors.
Absolute smoke and mirrors. Yeah. Just a facade. Yeah. Absolute facade. And some people's is better than others. But wherever you look, it's a facade.
Just blindly walking down that hallway at night time trying to find the bathroom. That's what it is. Just banging into the wall and then you finally get there and I don't know, sometimes it's a little bit shit, sometimes it's not.
That's it, mate. And it doesn't matter if you're living in a tent or a mansion. It's exactly the same.
Yeah.
And it is fascinating as you discover these things and you progress through these. And then the hairdressing and the comment you made there about it being something that was a sensible choice. What helped you to want to make a sensible choice?
I think because I'd got out of school, I'd played around, I'd played up. I think that was also part of the conditioning in my surroundings that you had to pick a direction that was sensible, reliable, achievable, rather than going into an environment that allowed you to probably dream about things that are a bit more ridiculous. But we were talking about before though too, I don't think you really understand those kind of scenarios until you get more into that middle-aged part of your life where you absorb, repeat. I mentioned it before. And then you go, well, why? Like, I'm not really that happy doing that. I'm not feeling like it's a good idea anymore. Why? Surely there must be a different way to exist in this world. But for me anyway, I don't know how you went, but I culminated with me not enjoying my life to a point that I couldn't go into my work environment anymore. So I'd never understood what it's like to have some form of, I guess, anxiety. I just thought all of that was probably in your head, but I physically, the last couple of days I walked into that office, I couldn't do it anymore. And that was also part and parcel with being diagnosed with a bit of a skin cancer situation. That was then kind of reworded to me in a way that I thought was quite serendipitous, where my mother actually told me, she goes, look, mate, sometimes the universe is going to whisper to you, sometimes it'll hit you with a sledgehammer, and if you don't listen to it when it's whispering, it's going to hit you like a mother. And then I picked up a brush that day and I started painting and I haven't stopped. And then that's how we, I guess, reconnected more recently.
That's it. You fast forward and you get to this point. But, mate, I'm not going to let you fast forward because that's a fucking great story. But what I'm going to do and where I'm trapped at the moment is I'm trapped back at going from personal training to hairdressing. Because, again, I listen to that story and I'm like, none of this makes any sense. I find it really extraordinary because it is a career choice, even though it's a very safe one. It is actually a very artistic career choice. There is a hell of a lot of creativity, if I understand correctly, in that field. And that's something you have to apprentice through as well, don't you?
Yeah. So at that stage, it was a 4-year apprenticeship to do. But the funny part about that, though, too, I remember, and all apprentices out there probably understand it, that first paycheck after coming off a a normal wage where you're getting $4.85 an hour, I think that gives you a lovely understanding of what it's like to start at those points to then get to the next point. But for me anyway, personal training was trying to get myself healthy, and then I achieved that. Next phase was then trying to get a safe job, and hairdressing for me was, because I was not book smart, it meant that I was using my hands, which I was always good at, and it was allowing me to work out the human condition a bit more by having 8 to 10 hours per day talking, understanding, witnessing, working out who were the successful operators in that business, what made them successful. Was it actually their skill set, or was it actually the way that they interacted with their clientele? And I learned pretty quickly it all came down to personality, how you can convey a message to someone to allow them to feel like they are the centre of the room. And that's what I thought was important. Because, it's great when you meet those people and you go, geez, that person's such a great person. But then you walk away from that and you go, I think I actually spent the whole time talking about myself. So the secret with that was just get someone talking and get them talking about something they love, and they'll love you. It's really interesting. Like, you're not really giving anything. All you're doing is just sitting there waiting. And the power of a pause, though, too.
And you'll notice that's actually something that I had to train myself to do specifically for this, is there's actually a lot. You just stop and you just let it hang. And then people will actually fill that empty space. And I find that astonishing as well, is that you can just hold and let it go. And now we'll probably have a standoff of silence. But it's astonishing, again, we all think we're so bloody brilliant. This is part of what I enjoy about advertising and marketing, is as smart as we all think we are, what the data tells me is that we're not real bright. And the fact that you can do that, and if you give somebody the space to talk about themselves, because that's one of the great rules of like sales, is everybody's favourite topic is themselves. So you just let them run and be engaged and listen and, repeat things back. And there's all these...
the body mirroring and all that.
Yeah, the mirroring and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah. And there's been that many books written about it.
But you don't even know that stuff. I remember somebody saying to me, going, oh, you're really good at mirroring. And I'm like, huh? Because I didn't understand. But I somehow was observant enough to pick up social cues and go, good social cue, bad social cue, and do more of the good ones and less of the bad ones. And that helps make you a better communicator. And the good communicating was my way of covering up for all the shortfalls that I had, because as long as you could be charming and engaging, you didn't actually have, you could cover off a big pile of flaws, was the reason I put effort into it.
Oh, it's a tool.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's a tool. But it's not a tool that you use to try and take advantage of a situation. It's a tool where you're using it wholly and solely to make yourself feel more comfortable in an environment that you're not feeling comfortable in.
Totally.
And by putting a spotlight on someone else, that usually means that you're going to feel more relaxed, more comfortable if you're not absorbing that light, if that makes sense.
Makes a heap of sense.
Yeah.
And it's also a great way to make a new friend and discover what people are into. Because when you're actually interested in people, which I assume you are, because I'm endlessly fascinated by people, which is why I love just sitting here talking to people, because I am endlessly fascinated as to why people do things. And when you find those things out in their own words, they're extraordinary. Yeah. Like, everybody has brilliant stories, and it doesn't matter who they are or what they've done. When you actually get away from the, polite things we're supposed to say to each other, and you actually go, yeah, but why? And you're like, that's a great story. That's the best stories.
Oh, yeah. But I think, like what we were talking about before, that lineage of how you get to that point, and then you can then see where their direction potentially changes in the future, though, too. But I think the most interesting people are the ones that tend to allow themselves to get reinvented and have the guts to want to reinvent themselves, though, too. because they've usually done it quite a few times. Well, the industry I'm now in, I'm fortunate enough to be exposed to such an array of high intelligent, highly interesting people that you walk away from some of these people and go, wow, like that, and this is coming from sleepy Brisbane. And I think that for me is the most exciting part. Sleepy little Brisbane, the underdog. My cousins always used to tease us about maybe getting running water up here, growing up as kids coming from Victoria and New South Wales. It's, I think having that view from the outside meant that Brisbane's allowed to evolve in a way that's quite unique and special.
That is bloody beautiful, and it's my favourite part is that people don't see us coming.
Yeah.
When you're competing against people from Sydney and Melbourne,
Definitely.
The advantage that they don't have is that casual Queensland attitude, where we are, seemingly slow with our rednecks and yee-haws, and then ruthlessly effective.
Yeah.
And they just don't even see it coming.
Oh, I think it's great.
You just fuck them up.
Yeah. But I do think it's hilarious though too. Like the further north you go, the more the vowels become prevalent. So by the time you get past Cairns, everything you just might as well say A-I-O-U because everything gets a little bit more drawn out. But it's because it's so bloody hot that you can't effectively use everything because your brain's too busy solving problems to get you into a better position.
Yeah, I was laughing, going, you can't burn the extra calories up there because it's so bloody hot. And then you can't. The bad joke up there is it's so beautiful, but you can't swim in the water.
Yeah.
I'm like, this place is just a sick joke.
It's stunning up there, but mate, it's. But I think that's all part of Brisbane though too, like the silent assassin kind of attitude where you're too focused on getting your goals in line and sorting that out, that you don't need to, beat your chest and brag about it. It's a wonderful environment.
That doesn't add anything. The magic is in the scoreboard, whether or not it's public or private.
Yeah.
That just doing those things that make you happy and working your way through them, that's very satisfying.
Yeah. Well, I think a happy person's a busy person, isn't it?
Mate, very happy.
The more you've got on your plate, the happier you are. Well, that's the way I live anyway. I think stagnant time, everyone gets a bit antsy.
Oh yeah, it's certainly not good for me though.
That's a funny one though too. We've finally worked it out. So my wife works in the business with myself, and we've worked out that if I'm not active on a daily basis, I tend to get somewhat a little bit of hypochondria settles in. So the way the creative mind works, if I'm not creating something, I'll create a scenario in my mind where I think maybe today, it feels like I might be about to have appendicitis, so I'm a little bit sore, or my hearing's gone a bit off. So I need to keep my imagination occupied with a canvas and a paintbrush or anything, a pencil. Otherwise, I'll develop these scenarios of complete lunacy. But I think that's just the way you're wired. I don't know how you are with that. The little voice in there, she keeps going.
An idle mind is the devil's playground.
Oh.
That's the one I say to myself whenever I'm sitting around just chilling, because I'm geared to go to terrible places, and I rapidly devolve if I'm not productive and doing things, because I just go to catastrophizing is my jam.
Oh, look, it's bizarre, but I think once you realise that you just got to keep yourself busy.
Yeah, that's just a pattern.
Yeah.
You're like, okay, don't do that.
Yeah, I tried Lego at one point. That was too frustrating because it wasn't built quick enough. But
and it's too structured.
Yeah,
you got to follow the bloody instructions. And you're like, fuck, not that piece here. I don't want to do that. I just want to freeform.
Why would that go there?
Yeah, no, I just want to freeform.
Yeah.
I don't want to do what I'm told. No good at that.
No,
don't want that. I'm also still back at hairdressing. I'm looping all the way back. This is the thing. I fall off.
Sorry, I've tangent over here.
Then I come back, mate. I bloody love a tangent. That's why I follow the arc of a person's life. It's the only way I can retain any sort of, when I fall down the rabbit hole and go, oh God, where were we? Oh, that's right. Yep. Because cutting hair was a fairly pivotal time in your life. probably for a few reasons, I have to imagine. Where'd you actually do that? Are you comfortable to share, or?
Started off Gold Coast and then moved to back to Brisbane so I could survive on the $4.80 an hour with the hairdressing wage, and then completed that here. I think I maybe knocked out about 16 years on that, and then nicked off to the UK for a little bit, and then came back and did it a bit more.
Because I'm trying to line up a specific point in time where I ran into you in Fortitude Valley and you had a sweet old British car that I recall fondly. Would that have been hairdressing time or different time? Based on ownership of that specific vehicle?
Yeah, that was hairdressing time. So this thing was we used to call it the Silver Bullet. It's a 1966 Jaguar Mark 10. It was the last Jaguar that come out of the actual Jaguar factory before it got sold to Ford. And this thing was automatic. It was like driving a lazy boy. Beautiful red leather seats on the inside. It had a cigar lighter. It had tables in the back. And this thing just sucked the juice like you wouldn't believe. It was a dream to drive, but just not in summertime. No aircon. You had windows that didn't kind of work.
And did it leak oil like a real Jag?
It did, yeah, of course. Yeah, like you got to fill up with petrol and oil at the same time.
Correct.
Yeah. Lucky it had 2 petrol tanks though too, so that helps.
Mate,
so.
They had to have the dual petrol tanks.
Yeah.
They're the least efficient car I've ever seen. See, the fun side story here is my old boy is a Jag man.
I didn't know that.
Oh, mate. Jag.
Still?
Yeah, mate. So in the 70s, when my old boy was running his own business and also wanted to demonstrate that he was doing all right, he went and bought like the baby poo yellow XJ.
Nice.
And I have early memories of this baby poo yellow XJ. And then, much to my mum's displeasure, he bought a 1985 XJ6, white, 2 fuel tanks, red leather interior, all the good things. He did that, look, let's just say without her permission, just bought it and came home with it.
Just arrived.
As you do. Actually, see a lot of parallels. So look at my own life, except I bring home falcons. So there are photos of me as a very small boy sitting in a Jag, and growing up in a household that idolised the Jaguar. All my dad ever wanted, his dream car from when he was a young man was an E-Type. That's all he ever wanted.
Nice.
The end. That's all he ever wanted. But obviously couldn't afford one of those, but was able to wrangle himself into an XJ6. So I actually learned to drive. That was the first car I ever drove.
You're joking.
No. Dad had let me back it in and out of the garage because I was obsessed with vehicles because I just found them so beautiful. And staring at that Jaguar in particular, that car, and as I sit here and think about it and say it all out loud, that white XJ6 is probably what really got me super obsessed into design aesthetic in cars, because there was something about the flow of the lines on that car and the way that it sort of came in and out. It had the twin round headlights and the bonnet, had the sort of the swooping and the lines and the whole, everything about that car, every direction you looked at it, it was beautiful.
Well, even the cohesion though too from the inside as well. Like the way they do the leather, the dash, everything looked like it was coming out of the one brain.
Correct. Just an absolute work of art. And the dash, the way that they did the inlaid wood grain, and that was real timber. They would layer that. We went to the Jag factory in the early 90s and Dad managed to talk his way in there, and I actually came home with a piece of the raw wood that they would use to do the wood grain dashes. But
no laminate inside, just wood.
Yeah, the actual raw timber. And the way that they would make that, and then the panel gaps, everything about it was accurate and precise and beautiful. And even as I sit here thinking about it. You'd put your hand on the gear lever because they're on automatic. You didn't change gears in those. The way that sat in your hand, because it's two sort of round. What's a round triangle? There's probably a word for whatever that's called.
I can see you doing
thingamajig,
it.
and those would screw together. But when that would sit in your hand, it was just absolutely perfect. And then it was, a chromed gear lever, and it had the two, because obviously you punched darts back in the 80s.
Yeah.
It'd have the cigarette things
The trough.
just everywhere. There were just cigarette troughs everywhere, in the front, in the back, in the side, because what do you do when you drive a Jag? You fucking smoke darts. Elegantly, of course. And they were just everywhere.
Got the old spaces out.
Absolutely. And then it had the switches, and and I found all this so fascinating. It's hilarious talking about this, actually. There was the button that you would push to change the fuel tanks.
Yep.
And again, they had a nice feel to them, to the way that they would actuate. And I obviously didn't understand any of this. I didn't understand design language. I didn't understand anything.
Yeah.
I just looked at it and I'm like, that is magnificent. I don't know why, but it is magnificent.
Oh, they're deliciously tactile, those vehicles.
Oh,
like
gorgeous.
Mine being a little bit older though too, the dash was up like an aeroplane cockpit. So mine were toggles that you'd flick up and down like you're about to take off into space. But again, it was something about the sound and the weight. You're probably the same with the buttons though too. That you had to have a certain amount of force on them, but at the same time you're trying to be a bit delicate to make sure you didn't damage the vehicle, because every time you hop in the bloody thing, it's just so damn pretty. And then you'd get stuck to the red leather because there's no aircon. And peel yourself off.
No. The trick there was the sheepskin seat cover.
I forgot about that.
You get a set of those bad boys, and then you don't stick to the leather anymore.
I feel like that was when a lot of people felt they made it in life, when you could upgrade to the sheepskin. That and an ice maker in a fridge. I think that was one of the two penultimate kind of life goals was, sheepskin.
Mate, sheepskin seat covers. So that was the thing. We were obviously, we'd made it because we had a Jag. And I'd get dropped to school. Well, actually, no, Dad had a Falcon as well. And actually a Magna. Like, there was the work car, and then there was the Jag. And it's actually been my favourite thing, watching Jeremy Clarkson and him, with his whole thing, the drive a Jag.
Yeah.
I just love all that, because this was like my life growing up, was Dad, wanting to be a big baller in his Jags.
So comfortable. Only in winter.
But just magnificent cars.
Yeah.
So beautiful. And that was probably the thing that when I saw you and I saw that car, I remember people, I was chatting with a fella this morning at a meeting at 6 a.m. because of course I did, because there's something wrong with me. And he was saying how he remembers people buy their cars. He's like, is it one of these at this specific model and that with that number plate? And I'm like, oh yeah, that bloke. Can't remember his name, but you remember every exquisite detail of the vehicle.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, that was probably a lot of our high school years as well, though, too. Like the kids that had the Monaros, what we thought were so cool back then, but now you look at the monetary value of the things, and you've got 16, 17-year-old kids rocking around in these things, like just lighting them up constantly, tearing them to shreds, and now they're worth a bloody fortune. But they were beautiful back then, and just the power, the sound, it was this whole kind of immersive environment once you got in the bloody things. Whether or not you were driving didn't really matter. Just to be in them was incredible.
Mate, it was a symphony of experiences, and it's actually my entire beef with Teslas in particular is that you're essentially driving an iPad. Like, I'm very impressed. The technology is cool. It has no soul.
Yeah, and I think even though the design, you can see where it's at, the finish for me isn't right there, where you see the gap lines.
Mate, the panel gaps give me the heebie-jeebies.
But maybe that's too, because I'm a visual person with the life choice, but the gap lines, and then when you hear about paint chip so easy, I personally still haven't had the opportunity to drive one. I've only ever been in the passenger side of it. What, you've got one?
The other bloke you met, he's got one.
Oh, you're joking.
I wouldn't have one of those. Are you fucking kidding me?
Right.
You
I couldn't think of you having one. Though.
Shit, no.
Yeah.
Mate, I got a fucking barrow that goes
Yeah.
when it sounds like a fucking jet engine as you wind it up. That's what I want. I want the symphony. Whereas, and what makes me really sad is my boy gets in the Tesla, and my brother's Tesla, and he's like, "Dad, this is the coolest car ever. Can we get one of these?" And like it does the Rainbow Road when it drives and all the things, and like he's losing his mind. And I'm like, I don't know if you're my son, buddy. Like I'm pretty confident. Like the lineage is there. You've got the giant forehead. Like there's clear markers, but I'm not sure. There's something hasn't lined up here. You don't enjoy any of these terrible things that your dad just is obsessed over.
You thought about adoption?
Oh, maybe. I'm like, mate, the milkman. There's something not right here. I'm just not sure what's going on. Look, they're very interesting, and I'm impressed, etc. I'm hanging out for hydrogen and biofuels, because they're. So, you know that E-Type I was telling you about that the old boy wanted?
Yeah.
So he retired, and then he spent another 5 years looking, and he finally bought it.
Right.
He bought a V12 manual E-Type, and he bought it so long ago. Like, remember when classic cars were a bad idea?
Yeah.
And nobody would buy them, and they were all worth $1, and everybody thought you were a moron? He bought it back then because, we just like cars. And we bought them because we thought that they were beautiful works of art before they had any collectible value whatsoever, because they're a terrible life choice because they're expensive and difficult. And he found what I believe was one of the lowest mileage E-Types anywhere on the planet. A gentleman had bought it new, and I'll probably get in trouble here, but it's a 72 or 73 model. And there's those Ipswich Road ambulances that just belt through. Don't worry.
The Symphony.
There's not one behind you, but this is what happens when you record at an intersection on Ipswich Road. But anyway.
Soothing sound.
The soothing sounds. He found this car. This fella had bought it. He had passed away. His son had obviously inherited the vehicle, and the son had sadly passed away. And this car had sat in a garage in the United States since 1973, and Dad bought it in, I think it was the 00s or thereabouts, if I've got my numbers right.
Right. So was it left-hand drive as well?
Left hook. But it ticked all the boxes that he wanted. Right. I mean, he just scoured the globe for the car that spoke to him, and he brought this thing in, and I didn't fully get it until I drove it. Mate, the symphony of a quad pipe manual V12 with questionable mufflers. And what's really magical, the wankers that drive like the Golfs and stuff, and they pop, and it's always the Audi RS3 or the Golf, and they're just a tool, and it's their first fast car, and they just go bap, 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 everywhere. And if you do that, you're a tool, and everybody thinks you're a tool. Nobody's impressed, just FYI. Mate, this bad boy, when you lift off a V12, the overrun, bum, ba, bum, 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 like just symphony for the senses. And that car, I'll probably get to drive it once a year if I'm lucky.
Yeah.
That is everything.
Still in love.
That is everything that a car is supposed to be.
Yeah.
And we went to UK in the 90s, and it was when the XJ220 had just been produced, which again was an unloved car for so long. But what they were doing back then, before Ford took them and did a big shit inside them.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a weird window of time after that, though, wasn't it?
Mate, very weird.
Yeah,
like X-type thing.
You had something that, I thought it was
hideous,
was amazing, and then it kind of, they almost fell off the wayside.
Mate,
completely.
they did. That XJR that they made in the 90s, where they supercharged a V8, like back when, like that, gangster.
Yeah.
And then it was over.
Yeah, it's strange.
And then they had a Ford Falcon radio inside a Jag, and I remember looking at that going,
You're kidding.
what?
You're joking.
What? Like, those were very, very, very sad days for Jaguar.
I've kind of gone off the boil a little bit, so I don't even know if they clawed their way back.
Mate, they're coming back. They made the F-Type, which is a good-looking thing and drives all right.
So they've now gone into electric or hybrid. Though.
Yeah,
so
well,
there's a few in my area that are rocking around
Yeah,
there.
Tata bought them.
Yeah.
So if you own a Range Rover or a Jag, or it's all owned by a company out of India that sort of bought all those and then saved them and unfucked them and made them kind of nice again. So they're making their way back, but so much damage was done over so many years. And this is the worst part: is I quite enjoy Fords, but Fords should just probably stick to what they do.
Stick in the lane.
Just stick in your lane. They didn't get the nuance of luxury.
Yeah.
They didn't get that, the touch and feel and the aesthetic is very important.
Oh, yeah.
And the sound that the door makes when it closes and
the weight of it, though.
the weight of it, the little things.
Yeah. Knowing that it's costing you an extra $5 just to go from light to light.
Yeah.
Not a great thing to brag about, but I think when you're pushing that much steel, it's nice.
It's very pleasant.
Yeah.
And you want to, you need to feel that.
Yeah.
You need to look around and just go,
Yeah, it feels connected to the road because it weighs 6 tonne.
Absolutely.
Yeah, not because the tyres are really good, not because the brakes are going to work.
No.
It
You
weighs.
just plant it.
Yeah.
Because you're so wildly inefficient.
Glory days.
Glory days, yeah, but I could bang on about Jags forever. But and see, this is where the tangents and the falling back and because this was me running into you in Fortitude Valley, seeing that car and going, "What a king!"
Yeah, look, she didn't last much longer after that.
Sad.
But
that would have been worth about 8 cents when you got rid of it too.
Oh, buddy, like it was a funny story actually. So the head gasket had gone on the thing. So trying to visualise what this car's like, you could get about 3 to 4 bodies in the boot and about the same, even with the engine in the engine bay underneath the hood. So the head gasket had gone. The guys that had been looking after it for a number of years, I was chatting to who I thought was in charge, and it was quite a funny story. So we agreed on a price to redo the engine, redo the gearbox, because if you're going to pull everything out, you might as well start fresh. And it was going to be, I think, a 3-month turnaround, which I thought was all right.
It's not unreasonable, given
knowing that you're going to get parts and everything else to replace. It turned into a 1.5 years. I got the thing back, and true to form, put it in the garage, and a lovely oil pool just started to come straight out of the bottom. I go, well, that's normal. That's Jag life.
Jag.
Let's get some more. We'll get petrol next time.
That's what they do.
Anyway, the bills come through, and it was something like 4 times the value of the car. And me being a hairdresser at that point at $4.80 an hour, like, there's no way in hell. Like I was looking at a payment plan of, I don't know, 4 or 5 years at that point. So I just said, look, how about you take the car and we'll call it quits. And then that was it. Never saw the thing again. So they had to pick it up because she was dropping so much oil. And then that's when the dispute over the billing came into play. But it turns out the guy that I was negotiating with initially, his brain was on the way out. So he was running off numbers from like 1970, not...
Oh, no, when he quoted you.
Yeah. So we did a handshake.
No.
So up until that point, I'd been using them for a long time, and we were handshaking on everything. And so he's come up with this number. So I'll just say no. So the number we'd agreed on was $5,000. So the car was worth $5,000 at the time. And so I got, still cheaper than buying a new car.
Absolutely.
Or a second-hand car. Anyway, I think it might have been his son. He's gone, I'll send you through the bill. And I'm through this process I'm going, look, this is a long time. I'm thinking maybe it's going to get more expensive. And don't worry about it, man. Like, we'll stick to the price point. It's going to be fine. Like, we're doing a good deal. And, anyway, the bills come through and it's $18,000. The thing's not even worth $5,000. And I go, I can't justify that. Like, yeah. Nor can I afford it. And I've done a handshake on $5,000. He goes, we can't listen to him. His brain hasn't been. He only comes into the office just to enjoy the day.
Oh God. Yeah, you could have told me that when we were agreeing on a price.
Oh well, yeah. From that day on, I'm a quote guy now.
Absolutely,
So, yeah.
I'd like that in writing, please.
Yeah, writing, paper trail.
Love a handshake too, but
well, I do too. I actually think there's a really good part of society that operates on it when the handshake works well for both parties. But when a handshake turns into
there's a pretty big stretch. Like, I'm not great at math, but there's a big stretch between 5 and 18.
Oh, well, even just the billable hours in the bloody thing. Like that was the bulk of it.
It's astonishing. Absolutely. It's the labour cost. It's the pain in the ass.
Okay, that's why I thought I had a deal.
Yeah, mate, sounds great. So can't buy a fucking broken second-hand engine for that much. So that's a cracker.
Yeah, so that's where we departed.
Wow. Mate,
so I went from that to the bus, so the big yellow limousine. That took me around for a while.
Big yellow limo. What was that? I'm not across this one.
Hey?
What's that? What was that? Big yellow
Council bus.
Council bus.
Big yellow limousine. Yeah. Sometimes my friends catch it as well.
There's an Australianism that I haven't picked up before. Wow. Just learnt something new for today. We can turn off now. I'm done.
Yeah. They got aircon. They got
big
two
yellow
doors.
limousine.
Two door.
Multiple seats, mate. Big yellow.
Free advertising on the side.
Oh, big banana. Wow. Okay. So just right that $4.85 an hour that could afford the bus.
Mate. Yeah. But
what a terrible.
That's the life of a hairdresser back then, though.
What a terrible lesson to learn. And in the hairdressing, did you go into? Was there anything that you sort of? Because I know that there's all sorts of fun things that go on in that world, and there's awards and shows and expressing your art. Did you actually go down any of those paths?
I did, yeah. I did. Got through some finals, some stuff. Had a full page in the old Courier Mail at one point.
Look out!
Like there's a difference in that era though too. There was a difference between, I refer to them as operators. So your operators are the bread and butter, going in, day out, booking up continually. Hour after hour, and then you've got the ones that go after those prizes. So, I think it's still none of those prizes come with any monetary value whatsoever. It is all wholly and solely an exercise and look at me. And when the bulk of that business is interpersonal connection, no one really cares.
No.
All you want is your hair a bit shorter than when you came in.
And preferably not so bad that I'm really happy when it grows out.
Yeah, you don't want to wait that 2 weeks. You want to wait maybe a day. So I was a bit turned off that just purely because of the excess workload involved with that. I was already pretty wiped from running 8-hour, 10-hour days in the office. So the photography and the fame in brackets didn't.
Mate, in the Courier Mail. How does it get any bigger than that?
Well, I didn't pay for it, so that was pretty good.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that was, in that era, I'm broadly guessing it was the 00s sometime.
Yeah,
I mean, that was still back when it was like 20 grand a page.
Yeah. I can't remember the last time I bought a paper.
That would have been Big Biscuits. I actually ordered them for a while there last year.
Did you?
Yeah.
Is it all advertising now?
Yeah, pretty much. It's mainly, it's like the Harvey Norman catalogue.
Right.
Just front to back every day.
Is that Hobbs and Henry cartoon still in it? Is it Hobbs?
Yeah, I think so.
Calvin and Hobbs.
Yeah, I think they're there. Yeah. It's very interesting to read through it. Very dramatic. But
good for a fire star.
Fairly entertaining. Broadly entertaining. Honestly, I was fascinated. I was involved with the sporting team.
Yeah.
And I was very interested to see what bits of news came through, whether or not correct photos were being used, angles. I did it as a commercial investment to watch what was unfolding in the press and then make notes and go, wrong photo there, people, and then bring that to the attention of said people and really just excessive attention to detail.
Right. So you'd be there scanning it with a ruler.
Yeah, absolutely. Yep. dead set, and then going, no, that's not the right photo. Why is that being used? Why is that still circulating? And
Yeah,
all sorts of things. And then going, okay, that opportunity doesn't work. I can see something that'll work a little bit better. Right, we should probably do this. Thinking about all sorts of things and placements and what ends up getting photographed and what doesn't. And yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah. So trying to deconstruct effective sponsorship, I guess, was probably the best way to assess that.
Yeah, well, I think in that platform though too, it is so much image related though too.
Heavily.
An image that is still punchy, whether or not it's blown up or shrunk down. So it needs to have those elements in it to catch the eye enough to stop and pause for that minute, even just to read the headline.
That's the one.
Yeah, interesting.
And there's a very specific layout, and I've always been very drawn to the magazine layout in publishing.
Yep.
Because again, back in our day, hot fours, fast fours, like these were my Bibles.
Yep.
But I realised as I started to understand stuff, and mate, there is more water here for you. Those aren't there for me. You don't have to make that 10 mils last. I splashed out and bought 3 bottles.
Thank you. Very kind.
Mate,
I'll pay back.
this is the thing, is we spare no expense when it comes to stealing a few bottles of water from the fridge.
Oh, I love the back massage on the way in. That was lovely.
It's very good. And now I've even totally lost. I can't even remember what I was
We're
talking
talking about advertising and paying.
Sorry, the advertising. The inside of the magazines. I actually love that layout. I love magazine layout, and that's actually something I use now in commercial documents. Is I love how you'd be flicking through those magazines, and then there's the little call-out things. So there'd be a picture, and then like a tiny bit of information about that picture to then draw you into the story.
Yep.
And I use that sort of thing now in, developing a big commercial pitch.
Yeah.
I do the exact same thing that I learned from reading magazines.
Yeah.
So I find that again as an art form.
Yep.
I look at everything as an art form, I guess, in one way or another, and I love looking at those things and going, "That's designed to do that, to get that, to elicit that effect."
Yeah. Well, it's quite clever.
It's very clever, mate.
Yeah.
It's none of it is by accident.
But I think the clever part of it, how can you pare back a message or an icon to a point that it's so simplified, but it still feels new and relevant? Like, how do you bridge that gap between the complexity of trying to get that information across, but then even page position though too. Like, how does that affect the mind? Like, obviously the right pages are always the favourable one, because when you're turning the page, you're automatically looking at the right side of it. It's
And I don't know how far down this rabbit hole that you've gone, but we also, when we skim a page, we look in a Z fashion, is how so left to right, diagonally across. And so when you actually look at page layouts on anything, if they're done well, they actually follow that. And that's actually particularly valuable on websites and stuff.
Yeah.
And this is where I find it really fascinating, is newspapers, this was harder to track.
Yeah.
But on the internet, you got like 0.7 of a second to grab attention. Yeah. And this is where you make it like real competitive sport stuff.
Yeah.
And then you look at all these little tricks.
Z, so does that then correspond though to even flat advertisement or TV structure
That's
as well?
how we...
So you're just programmed to do that?
That's what we do. That's our default.
Is that entirely a Western thing, just with the way that our writing's structured? Like, is it different?
Wholly possible. I haven't studied it in other languages because I haven't had to execute in other languages.
Yeah.
But there's an excellent chance that it would have a lot to do with the way that we read, and then the left to right.
Yeah.
Because you start there, go across, and then...
Interesting. Yeah.
Whereas if they go down the page, or the other way, if you start on the right, moving to the left, I would suggest that...
Like a backwards Z.
Yeah, that would then be ingrained in that way. Yeah. But in this market, and the market that I spend my time in, that's how we do it.
Interesting.
It's fascinating, and the thing is
so just going back to that though too.
Open to it.
So that diagonal in the Z, are we completely disregarding those two triangles either side of that line?
No, we are trying to, as fast as humanly possible, absorb all the information in that space. Right. And so by going in that pattern, where you go, you can then absorb enough information over a large volume of space at an extreme speed.
Okay. So I'm wondering, like, too, in that centre of the Z, is that actually valuable real estate as well? Like,
Less valuable.
is it the corners?
Start, stop, start, stop.
Gotcha.
Yeah, in the corners.
Yeah, interesting.
Potentially, yeah.
Yeah.
Your lefts and your rights and your tops and your bottoms. And the same thing, I always love the website, like the above the fold stuff.
Yeah.
And the fact that the language even comes from the way that the newspaper was presented, because they'd be in their stacks and folded in half. And then above the fold is how we describe that first bit that you see, which, you know, is where the huge typeface and the most impressive photo and the sensational words that evoke an emotive response where are there first to, again, catch our little lizard brains and go, ooh, things. And again, we think we're so bloody smart. And it's like, we're not. We're just dancing monkeys in a cage, throwing poo at each other.
Follow the leader.
Truly. And that's what I find most fascinating, is that we don't operate with your front cortex or whatever it is, our advanced processing. That's not where most of our decisions come from. Most of it's the old dinosaur brain at the back, and I love that stuff.
Yeah.
I'm no rocket surgeon. I don't speak with any, listen to everything I say with a grain of salt, because I don't know what I'm talking about. But the things I picked up along the way is that we default back to
that.
Yeah, for pretty much everything.
Interesting.
All your fight or flight and really basic assessments is where most of our decisions seem to be made. And you were even talking about it before with like your dopamine of when people buy things and that sort of stuff. Like there's chemical triggers in us, and we think that it's informed, but it's not.
Oh, I think you're really a passenger in your own life to a certain degree with those kind of things.
Massively.
Yeah.
It's only as you become aware.
Yeah.
When you take the red pill or the blue pill.
Yeah. But like going back to that though too, with the release of dopamine with purchasing, I think that's what everyone kind of were about to probably embark on now. We've had this 8, 9, 10 months of people restraining spending. I wouldn't be surprised if either like February, March next year, everyone just unleashes the gates because they've worked out that the world isn't disintegrating again, because that's what happens through COVID though too, really, wasn't it? I know I did it myself. I really reined everything in, and then 3-4 months later I'm going, everything's all right. Like, it's fine. And I didn't realise how much you actually miss that wanting to spend or buy or upgrade, or which is ridiculous. Like you think you're above and beyond it, but you go, oh yeah, no, cool. Yeah, I do want to get that. Why wouldn't I want to get that? But I always thought it was probably more advertising based, but I think it's probably more that reward, like the mouse in the cage. You give me that little bit of a dopamine so I can buy whatever.
It's exactly the same as the joy you found from tacking the bits of metal together to make the fish.
Yeah.
Is you get all those reward chemicals from that thing. It triggers all the same functions.
It's crazy. Yeah.
Which is awesome. Because it's hilarious when you can just short circuit all of this.
Yeah.
Because there's big electrified sacks of meat. There's just,
Well, I tell you what, it's going to be a lot more cheaper than buying the 10, 15 houses. You might as well just sit in the backyard with a bucket of metal welding away.
Absolutely. And then you get a few trips to Bunnings.
Yeah.
Mate, you get your snags.
I had a sausage on Saturday there, and it was just wonderful watching the queue coming through and the smiles. So you could see them, they could smell them. So I was waiting for mine because they're beautifully fresh. And you could see people kind of, before they even went into Bunnings, just walking their way, meandering up, and the smile got bigger and bigger and bigger. And then after they bought the thing, it kind of dissipated a little bit because they knew they had to wait for it. And then the smile went back on again, which was in their hand. And then it was all on for young and old.
It was a magical moment.
Oh, it was a saucy world.
Now I want a bloody Bunnings snag. I'm always disappointed when you go and the thing's not there and you can't get your snag. I'm deeply upset. And I've got my boy onto it too. And we actually had 2 snags the other day. We had one on the way in, and then he's like, "Dad, can we have one, another snag?" I'm like, "Yeah, buddy. Hell yeah, we can." He didn't even eat the whole one on the way home. He just wanted to go through that process again, obviously. He only had half of it and then took the rest of it home. I'm like, oh, on you, mate.
That's a wonderful life sometimes, isn't it?
But this is, and again, mate, these are the joys of meandering conversation. I was saying to you earlier that part of my favourite thing of all this stuff that we do is just, and this podcasting thing, is just sitting and talking. Because if there's something that is missing from my life, it's this sort of thing where you're just sitting and talking absolute garbage with people. And I do it when I'm camping because I specifically go places where there's no internet and you're there with other people. You don't see any devices. They're not in people's hands. And you just talk. Yeah. And it's magical.
Oh, it's nice. It's kind of, starting at one point, thinking you're going to finish up at another, and you never get there.
Nah, you're all over the shop. But there's a real joy in that. And my other favourite thing is, people that are tootling around in their cars and going about their days, is that you feel like you're part of it.
Yeah.
That's my favourite bit, is like they're effectively in the room with us, just enjoying the ins and outs of our meandering conversation.
The jibber jabber.
But again, it resonates with us because you go down all these bizarre rabbit holes that you'd never get to. You go into a room of people and you shake hands and, what do you do? What do you do? And you're all sizing each other up and all this sort of rubbish. You don't ever get to places like this. You don't get to places where you are deconstructing the Bunnings snag experience and the joy it brings to people through the moments of that purchasing experience. Yeah. Like, how do you ever get there? How on earth?
Yeah. Well, how do you liken a sausage to, purchasing a new Jag?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Like they're chalk and cheese, but it's essentially you're still happy at the end of both purchases.
So happy.
Yeah. One's that you might be happy for a little bit longer.
Yeah. You don't get the same eternal disappointment with the snag. No. Like, that just brings joy.
The maintenance,
Off the back of that enormous tangent, I'm going to come back to your hairdressing because I really enjoyed the story you told me earlier about one of your clients and then how you managed to wrangle additional chance encounters.
Oh, yeah, this is how I met my wife.
Magical story.
Yeah, great. So the one benefit of having hairdressing devour such a large portion of my life, which I don't know if I can say I regret it, but I probably wish I had the guts to go down a different avenue earlier, was that I got to find my wife. So she popped in one day. I was filling in for someone else and, just hit it off to the point where, I don't know if you're allowed to do it or not, but suggested to the guys taking the bookings that maybe no one else is available for a follow-up appointment apart from me. And that then stemmed into us dating briefly, heading off to Wee Paris where she proposed to me. And the rest is history. So, wonderful chance encounter. That was kind of one of those ones where you don't expect, but also ends up being the most fantastic thing.
Well, quite magical.
Yeah. Brilliant person, brilliant salesperson, brilliant business mind. And the two of us are now fortunate enough to work, side by side. I've got my crayons, she's got the computer. She's the brains behind the operation, and I'm the guy with the colouring and sticks. So it's great for me. I still have been too fearful to ask if she enjoys it, just in case.
It's a bold question.
Yeah, because I really enjoy my crayons, mate. Like it's nice waking up.
Good time.
Big chunk of canvas. Start at the top, finish at the bottom, or maybe don't finish, start something else, and she gets to turn it into money.
Honestly, it sounds like a pretty good setup.
Oh, it's great. Yeah.
And when she came in that first time, was she convinced? You noticed the spark there, or did you have to win her around over a couple of hairdressing sessions?
Oh, yeah. first time round, I was pretty nervous. I've seen her walk in,
And you've gone, hang on a second.
and like I've cut a lot of hair, and by that stage of my life, so there was no haircut I hadn't cut before. Anyway, she rolls in, and you know how you get taken across to the sink to get the old hair wash and a massage. So
That's the best part of the experience, just quietly.
yeah. So me being a nervous talker, I'm jibber jabbering through the whole thing. So there's no head massage, relaxation.
Just you talking shit, and she's like, "Shut the fuck
Yeah.
up."
She's like, bloody long day, mate. Like I've just been on the books all day. Can I just switch off? But anyway, my pickup line while we were still at the basin, you know, how your ears fill up with water and soap. And you normally, out of respect, I would always dry the ears off instead of you standing up and having ear water run down your shoulders.
Shake it out, yep.
So I've put the towel in the ears, and I said to her, I can't remember how I came up with this. I said, "Oh, look, I just saw an opening and I went with it." And that was it. We just hit it off from there. So, yeah, a little bit cheeky, a little bit something that probably wouldn't go down so well with Nan. But anyway, that was the beginning of it. And then for the rest of the next 45 minutes, my hand was shaking while I was trying to cut straight lines.
And you're there going,
Yeah.
"Play it cool.
It
Don't take the ear off."
Mate, she was a lot of air cutting.
Ooh.
You could hear them sniffing, but they weren't taking much off.
$1 million question. Do you still cut her hair now?
I do, yeah.
Get
Yeah,
out.
I do, yeah. Yeah, so you met her the other night.
I did, and
Yeah.
I did notice that she had what looked like a pretty fresh cut.
Yeah, so we sit in the backyard now, and she chops me and I chop her.
Get out of town.
Not the same level of relaxation that probably used to, but yeah, no, she's now currently donning a bowl haircut. So I've got different sized bowls at home. I throw on her head and we just cut a straight line around it.
Because I must say, she does rock that haircut. And I was looking at it because I notice such things. And it had an exquisite line to it. I mean, that was,
Quite sharp.
you know, that bowl, yeah, that was sharp. I mean,
yeah.
that didn't move. There was no, like, you got Swiss watch precision there. You can set your time by it.
Oh, she's sharp. It's like probably more sharp than Mo from Mo Curly and the Three Stooges. That kind of clean, sharp line.
Yeah, but, mate, spot on.
Yeah, she rocks it.
Oh, and totally owns it. The aesthetic is is spot. I can't believe you still do it. That's actually even more impressive.
Yeah, the only person I still cut. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. And she's getting quite good at doing mine because I look like a toilet brush at the best of times. So it's just more kind of reining that toilet brush into a mop.
Well, that's it. You've sort of just got the vibe. It's just there. It just exists on there.
Yeah, well, I get to look like a lunatic. Just job description, look like a lunatic.
Yeah.
Carry on like a psycho.
Yep. And you go, artiste. It fits the vibe. Yeah. Okay, so the smooth moves there, was that, when did we ask for the date? Was that out of the gates, or did you give it?
Oh, I'd followed up on the second haircut.
Ah.
Yeah, so I said, I'm popping down the road for a cheeky drink. And then that didn't happen.
Didn't work?
No.
Straight up rejection?
Oh,
or
mate, it got worse from there. So
really?
We
This is
ended
a
up
great
over
story.
at South Bank. So I'd heard that she was going to someone's birthday party.
So you'd investigated and stalked. I
Yeah.
gotcha. Yep.
So I'd gone over there with two very good friends of mine, and under the guise that were just going out for a lazy afternoon, perched ourselves in great viewing point, and I just kept buying bottles of wine, trying to keep these guys there. And by the time she's rolled in, I had a skinful. So,
So you're fucking
oh,
blind.
mate, I look like a gecko. I think both eyes were going separate directions.
Excellent. This is going well.
Oh, look, yeah,
What a way to
Casanova.
impress.
Casanova.
So
all
you've stalked, you've got blind,
Yeah.
and then she arrives.
Mate, this is Brisbane.
Please, I can't wait. Tell me the rest of this story.
All right, so then I see her queuing up for the bathroom.
Oh, now hang on. Now, which fine Brisbane institution?
This was at Stoke House, which is now Otto. So, yeah. But at like Stoke House, they didn't mind if you sat there, drinking yourself stupid. It was a lovely little environment sitting there looking at the water, having snacks and pretending to be way more fancy than you actually are. But anyway, I've seen her go into the queue, and I thought I'd follow, and I've said to her, "Hey, how you going? Have you got really bad gastro as well?" And then she just lost it, and a cubicle's come available, and she just ran in there, and then I thought, oh well, maybe it's time for me to go.
It's not a great line. I mean, out of all the things you could have possibly said, that's...
Yeah, well, I didn't have gastro at the time. I must clarify that. Nor did she. I just thought it was one of those things that maybe you said in a bathroom queue.
Yeah, it's a good one. Hilarious.
Yeah, but anyway, got her phone number and talked and texted every day ever since.
Take note.
Yeah.
Single men.
Stick your fingers in the ears and ask if someone's got gastro.
Mate, you should write a book on
Oh,
romance.
look, yeah.
It's just unbelievable.
Be a 3-series number.
I can't believe any of that worked, I'll be honest.
Can't believe I actually got here today.
That is an astonishing story. You really did a good job. Did at least the first date go a bit better than that shit show?
Oh, it was lovely. Yeah. No, I popped out to a restaurant. Had a lovely meal. Chat. Had a great old time. I said I was a gentleman, so I went home. And then, just kicked off from there. It was just non-stop laughs. And, we've been fortunate enough to nearly have, 10 years now down the track.
You found your person.
Yeah, a lot of fun. So you'd be the same, though, too. Like, we were talking about this before, though, too. It's you feel so fortunate when you've got that person by your side, and now too, like when you're working towards a goal too. I think the satisfaction in planning those goals,
doing it together.
Oh, it's incredible. But oddly enough, when you hit the goal, it's not as enjoyable as the planning process, I find. So the dream of trying to get somewhere is always the nuts and bolts of life, I think.
The joy is in the doing.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Like even though you're pulling your hair out, you're going crazy at the time. Yeah. The fun's actually dreaming of that unattainable.
And that's the fun part, is when you realise that is the magic, and making those things happen together.
Yeah.
And look, I don't know about your side, but on my side, that's also a shit show. And, there's no magic romantic fairy tale. Some days it's great, some days it's disgraceful.
Oh, yeah.
It's not, there's no linear start to finish. It, much like my conversation style, is just a meandering circus.
Yeah.
So.
I think the trick is just to identify when things are running real. Like, when you get that good run, you go, hang on, just breathe for a little bit.
Yeah. Look around. Go,
Yeah.
this is all right.
Yeah.
And when you find yourself in those moments, go, this is one of those moments.
Yeah.
This is one of those bits we'll look back on and go, this was it.
Yeah. But no, she's doing great guns.
That's really nice. Because what was she doing at the time? What was her...
She was in sales, so she was working for a skin company. And a grueling job. Like the amount of travel, lack of appreciation, lack of personal time that some of these jobs and industries devour is... I don't know if it's actually fair, to be honest. Like I don't even know if there's a monetary value to make it fair. Like I think when you're not wanting to enjoy a Saturday because you know you need rest on a Sunday to go back to work on a Monday, I don't think it's a life anymore. I think it's you're sacrificing what to show up to work on Monday to Friday, which is like partly why we jumped in deep with what we do now. Like you're doing that and you're failing at it, even though it's perceived as a level of success. But when you choose your own boundaries and how to navigate, how to live in this world on your own terms, it's so much more satisfying, even though it might not be the level of success that you've potentially felt in those other roles. Waking up and knowing that you're in charge of that day, that week, that month, that year of business planning is, oddly enough, the least amount of pressure I've ever felt in my life, because all you're doing now is just problem solving. You're not problem solving for someone else who you don't actually know what the problem's for. It's your own issues that you need to kind of navigate to get to that next step, or that next week, or that next point of exposure. It's it becomes so much more enjoyable. But I actually think though too, like your mind starts to change as well, where you start to crave a larger and larger goal and a goal setting, because these goals haven't been set by someone else. They haven't been targeted by a third party. They're all on your own back, and you physically want to get to that point purely for the satisfaction that you can tell yourself, and you don't need to tell anyone else about it. It's just, I remember it was that long ago that I wanted to have this, and now you've got it. And then you move to the next one, and the next one, and then the goals. Like, it's nice to have those lunatic goals as well, but I think you can then round that back though too with how do you want your life spent. And for us anyway, it's developing a life where you've got as much time together as possible. You're able to then enjoy every other aspect of your life as much as you possibly can, and still feel like you've got a sense of achievement. And for me especially, keeping myself busy, but busy in a way that doesn't negatively affect my ability to enjoy my friends, my family, and my wife. Not exactly in that order, but thereabouts. So I don't know how we got down that little tangent.
No, but see, that is success on your own terms.
Yeah.
And defining what success is for you compared to what we're told it is, which is an enormous bank account, flash car, flash life, flash, these are lots of the things that I certainly felt were things to aspire towards, until I realised that they're all pretty hollow and they don't actually make you feel any better.
Yeah.
They're lovely to have, but...
Well, I'll just interrupt you.
Please.
I felt like though too, like especially in your late 30s, it became almost a sport and a competition to tell everyone how much more exhausted, worn out, stressed you are. Like it became this competitive nature of...
the pissing contest of exhaustion.
Yeah. Oh, you wouldn't know how busy I am. I'm so busy. This, that, everything else. Instead of, hang on, no, I'm enjoying this. Yes, it is taking up my time, but it's goal orientated. So I think that's a blurry line too, where it's like ingrained social expectation of
and a social currency.
Yeah,
because if you're doing more, clearly you're more important.
Yeah. Oh, I couldn't agree more. Yeah,
that's the big one, because I'm such a big deal.
Yeah,
that I'm required for everything. And it's like, nah, you just probably haven't sorted your shit out. Like, there's probably a lot of stuff you should let go of, and you're probably micromanaging a ton of stuff and pissing a lot of people off. But, go you. Yeah. If you're that inefficient, congratulations.
Yeah. Oh, I understand that too. There's periods in people's lives where it's you can't control that.
No, and you've got to go full tilt.
But
it's the badge of honour, specifically.
Yeah.
That is questionable.
Yeah, and I felt myself kind of falling into that kind of mentality as well. Now we've got a great life. I colour in. I probably work more than I've ever worked in my life, but it doesn't feel like work.
I think that's the big one, is I work like a maniac. Like, from when I'm like eyes open to eyes closed, I don't have any capacity to stop.
Yeah.
But there's actually no real difference between me having a good time and me working. Yeah. They're effectively the same thing. Some of the problems are shittier, but broadly speaking, it's a pretty good time.
But it's not coming at a cost to your family though too. I think that's the main thing.
Only some days it does.
Yeah. But it's not. Yeah, the bulk of your life
No,
is.
it's not the things that really upset me, and in particular when working for other people and being forced to be at a desk and being penalised when you're not at the desk and all this sort of rubbish. They're the things that really frustrated me. Whereas I can now make very conscious decisions that, look, I need to give this time to these things, but then I can give this time just to us.
Yeah.
And having control over that rather than that being somebody else's decision.
Yeah, it's a weird one. I think it is in your head though too. When someone else tells you it's not right, but when you're in charge of that, it's
absolutely
it gels a lot easier.
It does, and I actually really enjoyed talking to my son about it and saying, this is what Dad does and this is why he does it. And I do it because of this, and I won't be here at this time, but I will be here at this time, and here's what we're going to do when it's just you and me.
Yeah.
And I hope to somehow embed in him subconsciously that you have to make choices. Consequences come with those. You can do anything you want, but you can't do everything. You've got to be able to give your attention to certain things at certain times. And I hope that he at least picks up something good.
I think that's probably crucial though too, because he's going into a world, I'm only surmising at the moment, where I think the traditional job set and mentality will vastly change by the time he's actually ready for the workforce.
It's already collapsed now.
Yeah, like he's going to embark on this weird journey of, is active time, office time, or is that now my lifetime, or how is that going to... Well, what I'm talking like traditional job sets.
And this is an astonishing one, and it's actually something that I find fascinating because he's 8 years old now. And he wants to be a YouTuber.
Right.
That's what he wants to do. He wants to be Mr. Beast. And not for not for money, not for any of that.
Yeah.
He loves being entertained by these guys, and he would like to entertain. And he actually, like a make-believe game, he will play a game and then pretend like he's running his YouTube channel. And he'll be like, "G'day guys, here's what we're doing today. And what we're going to do is this and that." And he'll be like performing the whole thing as he does it to be like his idols, who are these people that run gaming channels.
Yeah, interesting.
Like, astonishing.
Well, I was only made aware of this probably more recently, especially with like more so for the younger generation, where you've got some of these big heavy hitters that have created this content so well designed for that child's mentality of engagement, education, how to see the world, and obviously they're making a fortune out of it. But it fascinating for us to come from Mr. Doobie and the pencil nose guy. Who was he?
Sesame Street and Mr. Squiggle.
Yeah, Mr. Squiggle.
All this stuff.
You had that for half an hour. Now you've got access to this, which is actually also an educational tool as well. Like
it's incredible because I routinely ask him, he'll talk about stuff and I'll go, "Mate, where'd you learn that?" And he's like, "Oh, such and such on YouTube." And because interestingly, the stuff that he watches is extremely long form. It's quite one or two heads talking superimposed over whatever they're doing, and they're talking strategy and they're talking gameplay and all sorts of things. And it even goes down paths of people who design the game, people who work on the game, and he now has an understanding of game engines and designers and engineers and developers, and like he's learning all these different things that he then talks to me about. And this is a kid in grade 3, and you're there going, that is a very deep understanding of very complex things that you just do because you like it and you enjoy it. It's extraordinary watching it play out.
It's bizarre, really, isn't it?
Because I have a very, and this is, this comes down to like styles of parenting and this sort of stuff. I look at and I know people who are like, no devices and no device time and no this and no that. And I'm like, mate, that ship has sailed. Like, Pandora's box is open. This is life. And if you think it's not, you're wrong.
Yeah.
And if you're not allowing your kids to utilize these things, you're actually putting them behind, because show me what you do on a daily basis.
Yeah.
Like, this stuff
Yeah.
is integral. This is as important as learning to read and write,
Yeah.
being fluent in technology. Like, it is crucial. So my boy has always had access to tech. He's had a phone since he was little,
Yeah.
because I have encouraged it. I monitor it and control it and all the other things. But I straight up encourage it because I want him to be a weapon across platforms.
Yeah, all of it.
All of it. So he does Macs, PCs, phones, because I'm currently making sure he knows how to. I've got an old PC of mine, and I've got him set up on that, so that he understands, the architecture and the infrastructure across each thing, and he's fluent in them, because that is going to be their life, and we don't even know what they're going to do.
Oh yeah, I think it's quite wild. But me not being a parent as well, it must be so difficult how to navigate what kind of almost predicting the future, as well as what's the status quo doing. Don't want to be left out. What gear is my child directed towards? Do I try and direct them towards a certain goal as opposed to what they probably should be doing? It sounds like a bloody nightmare.
Oh, it is.
Yeah.
And I don't, and this is the funny thing, is the things I say, I actually say with no judgment. Since becoming a parent, I understand that none of it works the way you think. It is not dissimilar to my favourite Mike Tyson quote: everybody has a plan until they get punched in the face. I love that. That to me surmises all of life. I think it's one of, like, that should be on like Socrates style posters.
Yeah.
In my most humble of opinion, because it's the God's honest truth. You can map and plan all you like, but when you get fucking, and you're there seeing stars, like, what you do next is actually what matters.
Yeah.
And so, I look at parenting, I look at life, I look at all of it exactly the same. Like, you do you, but with my work and experience and knowledge and my tech understandings, as I look into my crystal ball, this is what I think.
Yeah.
And that's the thing, is this is just my singular worldview.
Oh yeah.
And
Well, you look at us at school though too. Like the argument was you had to learn how to do all those ridiculous calculus and everything else because you'd never have access to a.
You won't be carrying a calculator in your pocket.
It's been said 1,000 times.
Is my favourite
But
one.
you imagine that now, like, you'll never have, I don't know, access to all the knowledge in the world all the time. Like,
You need your Encyclopedia Britannica, and you better go look that up. How's your Dewey Decimal System?
but like,
I'd wager there's people listening that don't know what I'm talking
yeah.
about.
I'd like to see if there's a library that's still running that though too.
Good chance.
Yeah. Last time I popped into the Brisbane one, I couldn't see any cards there. It was all computers.
And all of it is just an educated gamble, like all these things and all these decisions and all this stuff that we do, because nobody's got any idea what's going to happen. Like, I find it hilarious. And I even look around at what we're doing now, like the fact that this is part of what I now consider my work, to sit and talk to people. You couldn't have done this. Like, you think back to then and back to the 90s, for example.
Well, you just needed a radio network.
You'd need a radio network.
Yeah.
And imagine working your way into one of those. Yeah. You'd start by cleaning the toilets, and you'd probably have to do that for 6 years.
Yeah.
And then you'd get like the 2 a.m. slot. You'd get the 2 till 4 slot, and you'd probably have to do that for 5 years.
Yeah.
Like, the road to it, whereas now you just make something and put it on the internet and boom, you're on.
Yeah. Oh, you'd be running out of words by the time you actually got the job you wanted.
Yeah. Oh, a buddy of mine was slaving at 4ZZZ, and I went and did a breakfast shift after a full night on the piss with him. And I remember looking at it going, this is a lot of work. Like, this shit's really hard. I'm like, why would anybody want to do this?
Yeah.
And those traditional paths and those things that we saw, and I think it's fascinating for our generation because we straddled that divide
Yeah.
of remembering what it was like before all these things and then seeing it all unfold now, whereas they're all born into it, and people that are born into it and come through it, like, this is all just normal.
Yeah, it's an interesting time, I think. Yeah, very, very, very unusual, I think.
Mate, very unusual. And it just opens doors to different ways of thinking, which is probably one of the fairly large themes of our conversation here, is that there are ways and means that if you're willing to look, there are other ways to do things and other ways to live your life. There's
Oh, well, yeah, I think you've tapped into that with your existence now. Like you're getting to do what you want, but oddly enough, I think when you follow those drives as well, they actually tend to be more fruitful.
Mate, they go to magical places because it's not hard. It's not an effort.
Yeah,
you're not having to pretend.
There's no the forgetting about the safe thing to do. I think part of the battle though too, isn't it? Thinking of and not second guessing. I think is one of those hard ones to push away continually.
It is.
Instead of going, this is a great idea. Why wouldn't it be a great idea? Of course, it's a great idea. Let's go for it.
Well, the other one is because you also have to believe for quite a long time before it shows a return.
Yeah,
is quite often the fact, and same as what we're doing here. Like, there's no monetary value that comes out of what I do here.
Yeah,
but I see, having seen enough things grow over time, I know that if you just stay the course, at some magical point in the future, it intersects with things going well. The magic is just staying at it long enough that you actually get there.
Oh, great! Yeah, and actually physically doing it. Not romanticising
not
the idea.
Not talking about it, but putting in the work.
Yeah.
And this is actually something that people come to me all the time about, starting YouTube channels or getting going. And I repeat to them Mr. Beast's advice, which I got through my son. If you want to start a YouTube channel and you want the advice is make 100 videos.
Yeah.
And then once you've done that, come back, you go, do you know what the next piece of advice is? Make 100 videos.
Yeah.
Like, I love that. Like, that is same as to become an artist, to become a welder, to become a sculptor, to become anything, to become good at anything. You just got to do it. I
think the skill is learning what works, what doesn't work, what works for you. More importantly, I think that's the main thing. And I've kind of hit that stride now, where there was a period where I was trying to paint for a market that I didn't know anything about, and now I paint things that I want in my house, and without any sense of arrogance in that. I think the things that I want in my house are the things that other people want in their homes as well. And so, allowing yourself to think that you've already made it, even though you haven't made it. It's not like a Kanye way of living. It's a way of living that is a lot more enjoyable than second guessing yourself and doubting yourself. I think that's been a big hurdle in my own kind of life.
Make stuff that you like.
Yeah,
isn't that it?
To do stuff that you want to be surrounded by.
Yeah, and you go, I want that in my house.
Yeah, because I'm a person. I'm a consumer. I know what I want. I know what I enjoy. Why wouldn't someone else want that same item?
Tell me this: the work that you were trying to create for the audience and you thought what they wanted. What was that process like?
That was like a never-ending well of comparison and examining everyone else's work around me. So I'm actually an artist that doesn't really have much contact with artists in the same medium. I do have contact with people who are in photography, videography. I don't see the necessity in talking about painted artwork with other artists. I don't feel like that aids my creativity. So now I try and just paint what has worked in the past, what I like when I say, what works in the past. A lot of these things aren't actually viable at the moment, but I feel like they will be viable in the long term. So the body of work that I've got is continually evolving and changing, because I believe that the more diverse you are, the better each individual style becomes. So you have to have you have to allow yourself to want to explore, rather than feeling like, okay, so this particular piece sold, I need to replicate that. No one really wants to replicate. You might as well buy a print, and I don't do prints. I'd rather allow myself to continually paint something new, something different, because every time you're doing that, you're forever evolving and ever changing. Like you don't feel stale, you don't feel stagnant, you don't feel like a robot. You're working towards something you don't quite know what the finish line is with, but you just have to do it, which is a weird feeling and a weird mentality. But if you don't do it, you're not going to get to where you're going to end up. But I think that's the beauty of art, though, too. It's like this futile battle that you've got in your own mind, thinking that, hang on, and I do this with my wife because she works upstairs at one end and I work down the other. And I said, well, what do you reckon? She goes, mate, it looks like it's got more paint on it than it does before. And I go, okay, cool, right. And I'll finish one and I'll bring it over and I go, what do you think? She goes, mate, it's not my favourite. I don't like it. And I'll go, well, but that's what it is. So it's a way of me kind of getting out of my head that I need this external approval. If I'm happy with it up here and I haven't overworked something, they tend to be the ones that are the winners. But I always go back to like you look at famous thing like Picasso produced over 50,000 artworks. 100 of them are considered masterworks. So it's like 1%. So for me to dawdle on something for 3 weeks, I'm losing that ability to find that 1%. I have to do volume. I have to experiment as much as I can.
There you go. Picasso, the original Mr. Beast.
Yeah.
Not 100, do 50,000, chip. Yeah. Wow. I didn't realise he actually made that much. I didn't realise he did that many works. That's ridiculous.
Yeah, well, I think it kind of encompasses etchings as well as clay work and things like that. But
that was just make the thing. Just keep making the thing.
Just make it. Yeah.
Well, he wasn't posting it on social media for
no,
for the clout.
No,
he was just doing the thing and chucking it over there, and then doing another thing.
Yeah, well, he used to trade off for dinner at the restaurant. He'd draw a sketch and try and get a free meal out of it.
Good hustle. He would have been a great influencer.
Yeah, well, what a great bartering system.
That's excellent. I'd draw a picture for a feed.
Yeah,
that's like, mate, beers for metal. Like that's actually good value when you consider the price of metal too. Like it makes an awful lot of sense, doesn't it? When you sort of say these things out loud, and that artistic process that you've developed into a formula, that you then have your own internal measure to go, that's it. It sort of hits the tolerance of where the sweet spot is, and you go, that's the right spot. It's there. Any more faffing, any less, not quite there, but there's just a little spot where you get to and you go, that's it.
Yeah, I think it's harnessing that productivity. I think it's, like I guess with like you look at car design though too, when something's been tweaked too much, it just looks wrong. But then when you've got those lines that just work and that cohesion, and they tend to be more simple. They don't tend to have too many extra angles or edges or...
Less is more.
Yeah. It's
just subtlety.
Yeah. I think that's part of the struggle, is feeling like you have to produce X amount of physical hours onto a canvas, but the result might not be actually what's in your brain though too. So you're thinking, okay, this is going to be the best bloody painting I've ever done in my life. It's going to be incredible. And then you start and you go, oh God, this thing's just falling apart. And then you got to try and rein it back in. And then you get to that last 2%. Like when you're renovating a house or something like that, last 2% is the hardest little bit to know when to stop, because you can either ruin it and you got to start again, or you just walk away for a little bit and you go, hang on, all that time and effort was worth it, and it looks not what was in my brain, but it looks pretty damn close. And even trying to have that confidence to think that every mark you're doing, why can't that have enough value for my own mind's sake to think that that's good enough? Why do I have to overwork a line because I don't quite think that I've done it quite good enough? Where potentially it could have been good an hour ago, 2 hours ago, and now I've overdone it, and now it looks a bit more convoluted because I'm second guessing myself. But I think that's just how things work sometimes.
That's the internal struggle of the artist.
Oh yeah, it's great. It's the most ridiculous.
It's very traumatic.
Oh, it's the most ridiculous way to generate a lifestyle.
Terrible idea.
Yeah. Oh.
That's the life advice I have when kids come. Parent will bring their children and go, "Would you like to tell about doing what you do?" I'm like, "It's a terrible life choice." Is my first piece of advice. But it works for me. Terrible. And I say that with absolute sincerity, and that is the last thing that people expect you're going to say to them.
But I also think, though, too, the power of no makes you more drawn in, so they're probably going to be more inclined to go, all right, that's a good idea. I could do it better, I reckon. I'll give it a good crack.
Terrible. And see, I'm just imagining, because the story you told about overworking that line, I mean, I could feel the pain in that story. Like, I can see you thinking of the exact thing that you overworked. Mate, I felt that burn.
Yeah, or you can hear Catherine in the background sometimes just going, mate, just breathe, breathe.
Yep.
Stop. I've heard you stop breathing, just fucking breathe.
Yeah, walk away.
Yeah.
Put the brush down.
But anyway, it's enjoyable. But I'm lucky enough, though, too, because I work with some incredible interior designers, and to be able to see my stuff in context as well allows, works after that to get better and better too, because when you see something in a home, you can then reassess again with if it is overworked or if it's underworked, or how can you change it? How can you make something better as a concept? How does natural light interplay with and its surroundings, which you would have gone well and truly into with the photography though too. What relevance by having a background will create motion on a still image? What do you need to get that captured in a frame that doesn't look too centered or too stilted or too staged? How do you get some form of an emotive response out of, a still image or a still painting?
How do you utilise the rule of thirds and have something look just right and know that it's sitting just right?
Yeah. Yeah, well, the Magic 3 is crucial. It's, when you don't use that, nothing bloody works.
No, it's terrible.
Yeah.
And I find all these things hilarious because you obviously reach a point where you can do them intuitively and you can just see it in your mind's eye, but understanding it. And then, and the thing I really love that you were telling me as well is how you hang your works in your own house.
Yeah.
Just so that you can vibe check.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's so useful because the process itself is you start off with excitement, you go through frustration, you get to the point where you're exhausted and you're, to be honest, sometimes pretty over it, and then you let it sit and you let it sit, and then because the internal vision of what you're trying to do, it gets a little bit forgotten, you then look back at actually what you finished, and it might just take nothing, it might take a little bit more, but you can't do that unless it's in context, I find, unless it's on a wall that isn't covered in paint, because my studio where I work here in Brisbane it just looks like Technicolor vomit everywhere. Like there's this paint all over the place. So having it on a clean wall next to a couch or next to the front door or in the kitchen allows me to see it in passing as opposed to seeing it as a single image. So that because I consider it more livable art, where the bulk of my work is either one or two colours. So it means that you're getting more of a sense of colour in your life on a day-to-day basis rather than an image, if that makes sense. So while they're quite distinctive, the images, when you live with something, you're not physically looking at it like you would look at it in a gallery. You're not analysing it. You're using it like a piece of furniture, or a coffee table. It becomes part of your surroundings. So that's why I cross-check them that way. And if it's not working and it's really starting to give me the irrits,
you walk past it and
I'll
it gives you the
attack
heebie-jeebies.
yeah,
and
you
you're
go,
like,
nah, it's not right.
didn't
Yeah.
pass the vibe check. Does
Yeah.
that happen a lot?
Oh yeah, it happens. It happens a decent amount, but not as much as I think I'd expect through that process. So while it's on the work wall, I'm thinking this thing's just, I got to fix it somehow. And then when you start living it, you go, hang on, this is really quite cool. And yeah, it's just it's strange how the brain works that way.
Oh, very.
Yeah. But like too, I'm guessing when you go through your editing process, you'd have ones which initially stand out and you go, that's a winner. And then once you start culling again and you start comparing, you go, well, hang on, what? And you look at it in different sizes and formats. You go, hang on, that one's not it. It's this one over here. It might be the forgotten child, but the forgotten child is sometimes the most interesting. And I think that's what you kind of try and create.
And this is actually a fascinating topic because to become a commercial motorsport photographer, which was the thing that I aimed to do, and, sort of kind of maybe did that, I guess, there was such a refinement process. And what's funny is when you said to me, like for that, like the selection process, so when you're choosing a frame, that's precisely what you do. So you'd line them up in Lightroom, which didn't exist when I started and took me years to learn. But once I figured it out, like that's your cataloguing and selection so you can cull them down. And it's effectively the same thing where it's the vibe check. And there, as you're flicking through them, there's ones that tick your mental checklist of all the things that an image should be, and it hits all those markers, and you're like, "Ooh, that one." And so you throw a number on that, your 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, of keeping it, and whether it's a keeper or not. And then you'll have 1 or 2 back to back, and you'll like look number 1, number 2, number 1, number 2, and figuring out which one speaks to you. But what's funny is when you said that to me, to get to the pointy end of that, I worked on my photography to the point where I would have the accuracy and precision to have the frame. So whatever I took when I took the photo, that it would be so accurate in camera that I could go in post-processing, I could have that image post-processed in less than 60 seconds.
Right. Wow.
Because I managed my workflow to a point where I then had a computer that could work at those sort of speeds, where I could then grab that photo and 60 seconds later be exporting the finished image, which meant... And what I liked about that, like that was just kind of game to me, is that my framing, my focus, everything about the capture of the frame had to have pinpoint accuracy to be able to post-produce at that speed.
Wow, that's quick, man.
Yeah, and it was. And then I would go through processes of making sure that the computer was as fast as possible, and I'd map stuff so that then I could do everything with like commands, because each time you make it faster, you make your job easier.
Yeah, right.
Because if you do it long, slow, painful, that's not commercially viable.
Yeah.
Whereas if you can... And the Olympics is actually where I learnt this, and it was 2012. I was shooting motorsport over in Malaysia, and Canon would always release new stuff in line with the Olympics, and they were explaining through what they could do, so operating at the highest level at that point in time, and again, as I say this out loud, I can see where I've built this from, is that their whole thing was that they would take a shot, there, and your camera was then hardwired in,
Yep.
and it would be 60 seconds from pushing the button to it being live on the internet. And that's so the highest high tier. And again, they had teams. You'd have photographer, post-production, like there'd be people doing that together, but you had to become truly exceptional to work at those speeds. So to aim for that as your goal, to be able to, because I go, well, I want to be a good sports photographer. I'd like to be one of the best, at what I do. That's what the very best in the world do. So why not try and emulate that?
I guess that kind of shows that level of confidence, though, too, to be able to know that what you're doing is right to begin with. You're not second guessing yourself, and have the confidence to not backtrack as well. Where I just assumed that you were still going back to that format of having to choose through hundreds and hundreds. Like to get to that. That's what I was trying to touch on before, is knowing that yes, I've got all that muscle control, that almost muscle memory of knowing when that's going to move, when this is going to move, that you can then just fall into that nice little zone of just trusting that everything is going to be all right. It's almost a meditative state. I think just
totally
just
is.
knowing full well.
Yep.
Yeah, of course that's perfect.
And that is the magic of that.
Yeah.
It truly is, and learning it. And what I would do, because generally you would be shooting for like a team or a couple of teams or something like that, and then you would know based on their order when they'd be coming around,
Yep.
and you'd roughly know how many minutes you'd have between frames.
Yeah.
So you'd have, depending on the size of the course, the best one is Nürburgring because you obviously get a few more minutes, because that's, full Nordschleife. Depending on how fast you go, you've got a few minutes. And then what you would do is, I'd frame up. I'd have a shot in my head. I'd see something. I'd take something. I'd test it.
Yeah.
And then I'd dial it in. And it's down to stuff where you move your focus point. And I'd go, right, I want the car there. Yeah. That part of the car will be the furthest forward on that angle. I will drill my focus on that. And I'd then practice it, because cars will generally hit a predictable, they'll hit the race line. So you know what the line is, you know the entry and the exit points, and then you know where you want it to be. And then you'd line up all your different parameters, and you'd practice it on the cars coming through, and then you go, right, 30 seconds, 20 seconds, 10 seconds, here it comes. Now, got it, boom, 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 check. Okay, because if you fuck it up, you won't see the car again. And this was one of the challenges, was sure you're shooting a 24-hour race, but you'll only see your car 4, 5, 6 times an hour.
Yeah.
So pretty important
You nail it.
that you nail it, because if you miss it 2 times, 3 times, and then you'd have to sacrifice your travel time between different points and go, right, I'm going to eat shit on that. All right, I've got to line it up for these next ones, because you do the math and you go, oh, I'm going to fuck up a couple of these. Those won't work. That won't. And you drill it down and you go, I'm not going to take that many frames. And you've actually got to be, and this was part of my process as well, I would always get to a track 2 days, 3 days early, and I would walk the track, and I would shoot it, and I would watch the sun, and I would look where the sun would be at what time of day, and I would spend my first 2 days learning the track, the arc of the sun, and then where I would need to be at what point in the day to take the style of shots that I would then enjoy, and I would then map that into so day one is generally a practice day, and then I'd take all my safety shots so that I knew I had a body of work that would satisfy, whatever delivery I had, if it was a magazine or whatever.
Yeah.
And then once you got all your safeties, then you start untethering and you start doing all your risky shots and just shooting fucking into the sun and shooting like wide open for a second and really big shutter drags and stuff like that.
So were these the ones that were then more interesting as well?
Oh, to me.
When you got to play?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Like trying to shoot wild stuff where in theory, the math adds up, and if I do this, this, and this, that should work. And then just trying it over and over and over and over and over again until you drill it. Because one of the things that you can do, and the joy with trying to do this stuff now, is if you go out and shoot an event and you're just starting, if you take 5,000 photos, you'll get 10 keepers. The trick is to be able to shoot 30 photos and have 15 keepers.
Yeah.
Like that's wild, and I doubt I could do that. But that again, that's the aim. Is you do not want to be processing 2,000 frames.
No, that's a lot of dead
Because if you're working and you're on the clock and you're exhausted, that is not a good time. Yeah. Whereas if you are ruthlessly efficient,
well, your eyes would get very tired as well, though. Too, I'd imagine if you are doing that extended 5,000 frames, though, too, you'd kind of get shell shocked from it.
Yeah, your physical exhaustion was something you had to manage very carefully, because you've got to carry all your shit. Yeah. It's hot, it's cold, it's raining, it's snowing, and quite often you'd get everything in a day. You are dehydrated, you're not eating well, you're not sleeping well, and you had to manage fatigue and all sorts of other things, and then what you wear and the way you dress, and like I'd wear hiking boots and stuff so that I was the most comfortable, and I put all this effort into what I would wear, and then trying different things, and then like really light hiking pants so that you didn't have too much heat but not too cold, and you'd have to have a rain jacket just in case it started raining, and the level of detail in every direction. I think that's part of what appealed to me about it as well, was to be good at it. You had to master so many things in so many directions that you'd never even think about, and be able to do it at a moment's notice. Because my favourite, and oddly, actually, it's a Nürburgring moment that springs to mind. I was down the end of the main straight they come and do. You got two big stadiums there on either side. Pit lane one side, big. It started fucking belting with rain. Like absolutely belting. And so I had plastic pants, the ones that you pull over. I had the rain pants. All the hiking stuff is great. So I put those on, put my rain jacket on. I had a big slip cover that you throw over your big telephoto lens. And I watched all these other photographers that were there run for cover, whereas I had everything on me at every moment at all times, and I stood there in the fucking belting rain that you couldn't see through, and I shot the shit out of that time. And I've got photos of I think it was Ferrari, I can't remember what car we were working with, but like just fucking rooster tails of water coming off the back of it, and the lights coming off it, and the tail lights, so it's under brakes, it's punching a big rooster tail of water, and I'm there just drilling shots, and there's nobody else around me, and like that's the magic of it, is being able to deal with everything that is thrown at you at that moment in time, and how you're feeling and all the other things, and being absolutely shattered, and still being able to be an effective, efficient artist. Yeah. And like that just speaks to me on every level.
Oh, yeah. I think, that prep work and that muscle memory.
It's ridiculous. And the prep work is something that I assume other people would do it too, but I just did it because you just want to outdo yourself. Like every time you go out, and I went, how do you outdo yourself? Well, you got to figure it out.
Yeah, there's no fun in mediocrity though, is there?
No, there's not, mate.
So you're going to do something, you might as well.
Yeah, get, mate, 10 tenths and just see what happens.
Stick on it.
Yeah. And that was part of the fun, was just deconstructing as you have done. And it was interesting listening to you talk about those different experiences that you go through and the different mental emotions of your work, is that you have deconstructed each of those processes to the point where you can recognise and acknowledge them. And by being able to do that, you then increase your effectiveness and your output. And these are all the things that, I spent time analysing to effectively just be a more effective artist.
Yeah, well, I think the minutiae of that though too is actually the nuts and bolts and the enjoyment, just as much as walking in there one day and having something easy and complete. Like trying to break the process down is actually quite fascinating, because most of the time you're kind of self-involved and trying to finish off that process to reflect in that stage. So yeah, it's it's a fine line of being aware, but also allowing yourself to make sure that you've got full concentration and dedication to what's in front of you. It's almost like you have to be a dolphin. You have your two brains. So, bloody dolphins, they swimming along and they'll switch off one of their brains, so that part of the brain can go to sleep, and then they'll switch off the other part so they can recharge the other side of the brain.
I did not know that.
Oh, otherwise they drown. So they literally can switch off half of their brain, almost go on autopilot.
Dead set.
While they're kind of swimming and breathing, recharge that, and then they'll go to the other side and recharge that one.
Wow.
But it's definitely a tightrope, and it's an enjoyable tightrope. And I think the funny part is how do you get yourself back into that state where you know things are just working so bloody well, but you can never quite remember it. Like you recognise the feeling, you can acknowledge when it's happening, but you can't for the life of me. And I'm still trying to work it out. How do you get yourself back to that point? And I'm sure everyone's probably experienced that though too, where you've had those little moments and you get that little tingle up the back of your neck, and you go, something's really good's happening, but you can't quite break it down. And I think that's what I'm trying to do now, is break that moment, all those moments or collective moments down into somehow compartmentalise it so you can then revisit that at any given time. So I think that's also part of the enjoyment of what we do too, is trying to get into that mindset. But like going back to the art though too, like I've always tried to create, I call it incomplete completion, where with like I'm guessing with a lot of your photographies, people like to see a story within that frame and see potentially what's actually happening outside that frame and imagine what's happening outside that frame. So with my artwork, I try and get it to a point that it looks complete, but it also requires involvement from the viewer to maybe interject into it and say, well, I probably would have finished it off this way, or maybe that needs a little bit more work there. But without those elements, it doesn't become engaging. And I'm not saying I'm being lazy by not finishing that way. It's all an intentional way of trying to create a dialogue and a story and an emotive response, much like a well-structured photo. There might be a few little bits that aren't quite right in it, but the storyline within that, and you might not know the extent of how hard that driver's been driving up until that point, but you can imagine what's to come around that corner. I'm just looking at one of your photos over here. We've got someone tailing, someone in the lead. What's going to happen next? And having something that's still and dead, and that time's passed. So by the time an artwork's finished, the time's passed, it's over, it's done. How do you get that person 3 years, 5 years, 10 years down the track to go, hang on, why was he thinking when he was doing that bit? Why is that bit there? But why does it still look good, but I feel like it could be more? Like that's a line I'm trying to run at the moment, where I'm happy with it, and I know I probably might still want to work on it. But how can I get a third party to kind of invest in that story as well?
Because what popped into my head as you were explaining those things was, we're trying to make intangible tangible, I think was the sentence that came to me, is we're trying to grab these feelings and emotions and experiences and then create circumstances that allow those to happen.
Yeah.
And I find that in writing, when I put a heap of time into trying to be a better writer. The advice there is that you'll never want to write, sit down and write. Yeah. And so I set a time each day, because I, again, reverse engineered it. What do? You set up a place where there's no excuses, you make a cup of coffee, you sit down, you open the thing, you start writing. And if you don't know what to write, you write, I don't know what to write, and my cup of Nescafe Blend 43 is actually really tasty, and out the window I can see a bird in the grass and the sun's rising, and then
something happens.
In the act of doing, you then create the opportunity and it just follows from there. But if you don't start, if you don't activate the activity, it will never come. There is no moment of inspiration. That doesn't exist. Yeah. You have to
Well, you got to show up.
pick up the brush, start painting, even if you fucking hate it, and then there is a moment there in the doing where you then fall into that place.
Yeah. Well, good, like yourself though too. Like everyone always asks me, how do you get in the mood? Do you have a glass of wine? Do you do this? Do you do that? I don't have a drop to drink, and I treat it like it is a work environment. So I show up and I start, and obviously there's days where things work, but sometimes those days that don't work are the days that work the best, where you've fixed a problem that you didn't know you had, or you thought there was another problem involved with that. But you're so right. Like if you're not there in front of it, how else is it meant to get bloody done? Like
it's building discipline.
Yeah.
And this is something that you would recall from your PT days and teaching people, and it's part of the reason I get up at 4:50 in the morning 3 times a week and go to the gym. I'm not exactly the picture of Adonis here.
Well, we're middle-aged now. We're a little bit more energy efficient.
You're way more energy efficient, and I'm built for comfort, not speed. But overcoming your own self at 4:50 in the morning when you haven't had enough sleep and you're fucking stressing about something and everything's going wrong, but you go, I have, and this is how far I have to go, is that I know that there's no fucking way in the world that I would go if there wasn't somebody else going.
Yeah.
So I have somebody that meets me there. Mr. James Barley,
I know him very well.
Is my gym buddy, and mate, he's surprisingly disciplined as well. Would you believe it? But so I know that he's going to be there, and if you turn up, you've then got to, if you don't turn up, you've got to answer that person, which was the joy of rowing actually, because if you didn't turn up, there'd be fucking a lot of other people angry at you. That was why that was good for getting up in the morning. But to overcome yourself, and I got the socks laid out, the keys laid out, towel, like everything. I have everything laid out, because if I have to activate one part of my brain, like it won't work. So the night before, every single thing is laid out, the keys, the water, because if I forget one of those things, I'm then walking around the house in a daze going, for fuck's sake, where are the fucking keys? Where the fuck is my towel? And so it's the same exercise as part of the discipline process. And this is actually what I look at it as, even when I don't go or when I have a shit session. I actually overcame myself, went through the process, I wasn't there mentally, but physically, but I turned up.
Yeah.
And to me, that is the goal, that is the victory, that is the win, is that even though no fucking part of me wanted to do it, I did it anyway.
Yeah.
And that's the magic, and that's where the talent comes from, that's where the skills come from, that's where even when I don't want to fucking do it, I still do it.
Yeah.
And that's like my whole ethos to my existence, is just do the fucking thing.
Yeah, I think it's the important life kind of lessons, really, aren't they?
It is. More than anything else.
Yeah.
Turn up.
Yeah, I think instead of being told find something that you love as a child, just show up. Show up. Doesn't matter what it is.
Build extraordinary discipline.
Yeah. Show up to something, and if that something's not the right thing, you'll work out pretty quickly what the next thing is, and keep yourself busy.
And do it with enthusiasm and a spring in your step.
Yeah.
Because that is also astonishing, is that even if you are somewhere fucking horrible, doing something fucking terrible, if you can do it with a smile on your face and a bit of banter, it's astonishing how that can change the entire dynamic.
Yeah. Yeah, it's amazing how a couple cheeky words can change a whole feel.
Every time. And it doesn't matter what shit job it is or what shit situation, a little quip and you're on your way.
Cheeky little one-liner.
Yeah, cheeky little zinger, and you're on your way, and you can actually transform the whole exercise, no matter how shit it is.
Oh, yeah.
With your art, we digressed pretty hard, but we're sort of nearing the end of this wonderful meandering tale. You explained that you obviously had a bit of a health scare, and that was part of what motivated you into the art world and just going, fuck it, just get on with it, have a go. You then faced the additional challenges because the timing around that wasn't ideal, was it, when you went for it?
Yeah, like it was. I finished up. I had the ability to put a show on in Melbourne within 6 months, and then there was a bit of a lag in between, and then COVID kicked off. So what I'd found with being able to put a show on is the goal at that point was trying to get involved with gallery style representation. And I started looking at the environment, and I've gone, hang on, like maybe there's something where we can develop your own kind of style of show. So I started calling around with wineries because I knew people like wine tasting and things like that. And I thought, well, what if I could repurpose the space I'm renting at the moment? So you have your one night open for yourself, you have all your glory stuff and everything else. Then you can diversify into different avenues. So what goes well with art? Wine. What goes well with wine? Cheese. So I started contacting a lot of wineries and floating the idea of maybe doing a tasting next time I do a show. So that was then the plan for that following year. And then COVID kicked off. And like we were saying before, you put all your money in your pocket and you think the world's going to end. And then so I'm going, oh, right, okay, cool. So I can't do shows because that's not allowed at the moment. What can you do? And what do I need? I need exposure. I need my art to sit in homes to get context. I need photography. I need videography. And I teamed up with Osborne and Co., which was an emerging interior design company, which are now, they've just gone gangbusters, like phenomenal work. Like we're looking at like the highest of high-end numbers. And we did a project around the corner from where I lived. Straight away we had photos, we had videos. That then turned into this wonderful scenario where, because people weren't really allowed to leave their house much, and the COVID mentality that was trickling through from down south, you were still allowed to go to open homes. So these open homes turned into essentially a pared back version of an art gallery. So we were attached to some of the most beautiful properties through that COVID time. And because that then became a sport for people on the weekends to go to an open home, it meant that people then started coming and looking at my art and then wanting to find out when was the next home coming available with my art in it. But oddly enough, these are still people which were in the market to buy these properties. So it all became this kind of intertwined thing where, rather than having art wholly and solely in a gallery scenario, my art's livable art. I want it to be in a home. I want it to be in your living room. I want it to be somewhere where you can use it as a conversational piece, a piece to fill a wall, a piece to sit back and admire, or just a piece just for the sake of it. Being able to tap into that market and then also seeing the artwork in context allowed me to, I think, fast-track my skill set. So when I could see a painting that I've produced sitting next to the dining table, the kitchen, the living room, I could then backtrack and work out, hang on, that particular style works really well for an industrial style building. This looks better in a Gold Coast high-rise penthouse apartment. And it allowed me to kind of explore more styles and varieties than what I thought I was wanting to go down. And because I had such a good relationship with Beck at Osborne and Co., we would be on the phone in the early stages continually. How about this idea? Have you seen this? Let's do this. And she was so intent with the property styling side of it to create something so different from what was on the market. Because, I don't know, next time you look at realestate.com, I'm still addicted to it. Like, I think there's nothing better than looking at architecture, what's going on with your neighbours, how Brisbane's evolving from an architecture point of view. And you've got some of these incredible designers coming through though too. Like, it's quite amazing to see it with now that Brisbane's net wealth is rising and it's rising rapidly, how that money's been utilised to beautify these properties. So we'd be on the phone and go, oh, I got this idea for a painting. How about we try this? And she'd go, oh, look, I do need to buy some new stock. I think I might go and buy, a dining table to match that and things like this. But obviously, things have changed now because it's got to a critical point where, the volume of stock she's got is now actually getting sold with these properties. So it's this nice rolling kind of trade of exposure, of context, of being able to partner up not only with the photographers and videographers who've got some incredible talent out there, but also the real estate agents. There's some amazing real estate agents out there who know their craft, and I'd never thought I'd say this, know their craft so well and know their market so well that why wouldn't you want to, A, present your house for sale at its best possible vantage point, but also to, as a person selling, why wouldn't you want to keep those images in your own personal catalogue to then look back in a few years' time and go, holy crap, geez, remember that house? That was amazing, that bloody house. Look how good it looked at the end of it. Even though it might have been a combination of your furniture and external furniture, but it then feeds that that machine of creativity. We're going, okay, cool, so we've sold out of this, made a bit of money out of this. Let's maybe try this over here, or let's try this over here. And I think there's a nice sense of pride that comes with that. It's and it made me not think that I was ever really need to be reliant on gallery representation from then on, because this was, I felt like this was the future. And then you started looking into percentages and things like that, and like some of these people are charging 40% markup on, what someone's producing and things like that. So my business now is actually, supplying directly to the collector, but it allows me to then get introduced to these amazing personalities. Like there's some incredible brains out there. So it's just funny how it all kind of evolved all through COVID, where I thought I'd be on death's door and I'd be going, stacking shelves at Coles and things like that. There's nothing wrong with that. I've done it before in the past, but I didn't think that my little paintings were going to take me anywhere. No, it's fantastic. And I think too, what we were saying before as well, I knew early on that it was never going to be a solo job. I needed to make sure that I had, great partnership with the framing company that I work with at Matisse. I've got Osborne and Co. I've got the photographers. There's so many of them, so I won't name everyone. But then the partnerships that evolve from that are so mutually beneficial that it, like each hand shakes each other. And I think that's exactly what everyone wants out of, I don't know, a neighbourhood, a lifestyle, a city, a life. And it's something that my wife and I have always strived towards. When you move to a new area, all right, we've got to get our hours up there. We've got to get our hours up. I just want someone to know my name, even though they might not really care, but you care because you want to feel like you're part of that community. So it was a really good way of kind of fast tracking that thing. And I'm not afraid of cold calling. Like I always thought cold calls, when I receive them, I get irritated. But when you're doing them yourself, you go, I think I've got a problem that you're probably not aware of, but I might be able to solve it for you, and I'm not going to ask anything from you, kind of attitude. It's worked really well. And then that's then flowed on too. Like I'm fortunate enough, I've teamed up with the Wine Experience, so we do wine labels for them, so the art's repurposed for that. There's a Sydney gin distillery called Blackwattle Bay. They've just released some delicious vodkas and gins, and you've got To Your Taste. There's a cocktail range. There's a jazz musician who's used the artwork too for his latest record this year. So it's nice, kind of feeling it like you're part of their fold as well, and hopefully they enjoy feeling part of my fold. But that's my kind of tangent yet again. I think we've gone about 35 tangents at the moment.
Oh, 35 an hour, I reckon. That's a really beautiful story. I really enjoy that. And the fact that you were, I guess, backed into that corner where you went, oh, God. And that has forced another level of thinking to then look for door number 3 and go, oh, God, what do we do now? And again, there's just a beautiful, happy accident that has come out of that because you've been forced to not follow what is the traditional path. And you've gone, well, crap, that's not going to work. Let's try the next one. And that is at the heart of self-employment, entrepreneurship, etc. You know, going from failure to failure with no lack of enthusiasm. You know, it doesn't matter because if you believe, you find a way. And I think that that's just astonishing. That's so clever. And particularly in its retelling, you look at that and it makes so much sense. And you're like, that's just a no-brainer.
Yeah.
It's a brilliant idea.
Yeah, well, I'm surprised more people haven't done it, to be honest.
Odds are you might get a few more given a crack at it. Have you noticed other people have picked it up yet?
Not as much as I thought. Cause I've only been honestly painting now for probably 3.5, 4 years. So I'm still fresh. I'm still green. But I think I'm aware more so of the long-term plan rather than thinking I'm going to be discovered. I don't think anyone ever gets discovered.
Absolutely not.
I think it's a fallacy thinking that someone is going to magically appear and say, hang on, you're going to be so-and-so. And more importantly, though, too, I enjoy that kind of day-to-day problem solving of it. I enjoy being able to find a solution for a problem that someone else might not realise could be better, or could be a mutually beneficial kind of partnership. But also that actually takes up probably about half my time. So I'm painting half the time. The other half of the time I'm trying to work out how to generate that business and work on the next thing and work on the next thing after that. So it's I think that's all part of the fun though too, because I think though too, like you look at it from the outset and you go, well, the whole premise and the whole platform's ridiculous from the outset. Who's gonna buy a stretched out piece of fabric with a bunch of pigment smeared around it and think it's good just because I did it? Like I have to be the one that propels that to complete that kind of whole idea. And it's all about brand association though too. Like the art world is very much like the stock market. Like you hear all these rumours too, people investing in it because it's a tax-free haven and this and that and everything else. And geez, I'm quite happy to be part of that, to be honest. Like it's if I can produce the stuff that then becomes a commodity, I'd love to do that. So that they're my long-term, big dream stuff is to hit those kind of resale values. Not potentially for me to get that kind of money, but to know that my work is perceived in that realm where that resale can resale and resale and resale, and it becomes a commodity as opposed to an emotive purchase. So, obviously, I enjoy the emotive purchase side of it, but the long term of going, oh God, imagine if I was almost like a tradable entity. That'd just be wild. And what that does to then value your new work. How does that then kind of pan out and work to your advantage? It's like why not set the bar high?
Absolutely. As my comment often is look at what the very best in the world do, aim at that and see what happens.
Yeah, we might as well throw a dart at the wall.
Bloody oath. Yeah. That's a good broad place to aim. I mean, let's face it, because you end up anywhere near that sphere. That's pretty cool.
Oh yeah. Well, why not? Why not?
And that's the other thing. Why not?
Yeah.
This is the part that
What's
I
the
think
other option?
is astonishing, is that extraordinary things aren't actually that far out of anybody's reach.
Yeah.
They're actually not that far. Most of the barriers are actually self-imposed.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I think that mental restriction that you put on yourself is, what's the bloody point? Like you're only doing yourself a disservice. And two, like, why not live in that mindset of thinking that this is possible and have that hope, as opposed to thinking obstacle after obstacle after obstacle, rather than thinking it's a block obstacle. All you're doing is maybe just moving it to the side. You're pushing it away. Or if you do hit that point, your brain will allow you to look at a different solution, and that solution could be 10 times better than what your original game plan was. And I think that's the fun side of it though too. Like with the COVID idea of going into the real estate, I look back on that now and I've gone, oh my gosh, that has been the most fun, fulfilling side of it. Especially when I get the call of, Beck ringing me, actually goes, I've got this project. What have you got? What have you got? And she'll send through all the furniture ready to go. I'm going, hang on, what about this? What about this? What about this? And I think feeling like Catherine and I are now part of that team, as well as every other team that we kind of encounter too, is and you're not really talking about the minutiae of your day-to-day like work life, if that makes sense. Like I'm not really running through how I picked that particular shade of colour, or does that look quite dry and fixed enough to frame up, or do I do this and that. It's actually thinking of it, moving it around and seeing it in the real world. And that's where I really get a buzz out of it, actually seeing it in someone's home, or seeing it on a bottle of booze, or on a record label. Like it's not just one purpose; it's multi-purpose artwork.
Just ridiculously cool, isn't it?
Oh, it's great. I think the main, you're probably saying, the main driving force in my life is making sure I don't have to go back to a normal job.
Oh, can I get an amen? Like, mate, I will go back to mowing lawns. I will do it, like, whatever it takes.
Yeah.
Because I can't fathom anything worse than having to go and be told what to do day in, day out, potentially by somebody I have no respect for.
Couldn't get back to that life.
It gives me shudders when I talk to people who are in those style of roles, and they're surrounded by people that like to create problems, and everything is a drama and everything, and you're not saving lives here in a lot of these roles, and yet they are expected to exist as if every day is life and death. Yeah. And their commitment to said role is make or break.
Yeah, and then you retire and you get a packet of Tim Tams.
Oh, if you're lucky.
Yeah, or you get fired.
Or you get fired.
Yeah.
And it comes down to the fact that I've seen... I see it everywhere, and it's that any idiot can point out problems. And I find this a lot, and I see this in people where they are so excited to point out the ways that something won't work and then plant that seed in your brain. And my antidote to that is reminding myself that any fucking moron can spot the problems. And if that's your greatest gift, you're not bringing much.
Yeah.
The genius is in finding solutions and going, I acknowledge that none of these things will work, but if I keep bouncing that idea and keep trying things, there's a magical little way through. Yeah. And to me, that's where all the genius lives.
Yeah, and I think that's the enjoyment of it, though, too. Like
Absolutely.
That's the fun.
Look at it going, this is fucked. Like none of this makes sense. None of it's going to work. Yeah. But I reckon if I just keep tapping there, I'll find something.
Yeah, something will get through. Something will pass. But I think going back to that too, like there's that famous quote though too about the 5% with work. So if your job was just that 5% more unhappy or more unfulfilling, you wouldn't justify the financial reward of it. You'd make that change in life. You'd progress to that next adventure. But because that 5% isn't quite bad enough for you, you're quite happy to sit in that role, in that lifestyle, kind of almost marinating away in your existence rather than going, hang on, that 5% makes a big deal in my life for the next 5, 10, 15 years. I want that 5% back and I want it back in my pocket, and I might not financially get rewarded for that 5% like I was, but at least I'm not thinking every day I'm waking up going, this is not me, this is not my life, almost like when you get fresh out of school and you have all those big hopes and dreams of change the world. You're going to be this and you're going to be that and you're going to be everything else. Tapering back to that mentality and going, why not do it now when you're in your 40s? Why not have that hope that this is all possible? Because it's a hell of a lot more fun living that way.
Mate, it's a hell of a lot more fun. I had a bloke say to me recently, he wrote on a thing, he's like, you're the Joe Rogan of Brisbane. And I'm like, do you know what? That's great. And do you know what? If it never gets any bigger than this little pocket of the world, that's fine with me. But for somebody to say that, I'm like, and I'm 43 years old and I'm redefining myself as a podcaster. But having somebody say
you've got
something
that
like
velvety voice for it, though. So.
Mate, but here's the thing. I've trained that velvety voice.
Right.
This is not an accident. The way I speak, the way I enunciate, the way everything that comes out, I have worked on, and I re-listen to every episode.
Right.
I have my brother listen to every episode. My brother gives me a shit list of all the things I fuck up and the words I repeat and things that I do and patterns that I wasn't even aware of. And then I take that shit list and I practice in my day-to-day interactions as I talk to people.
Yep.
And I have become increasingly aware of my patterns of speech, the good ones and the bad ones. And I chip away every fucking day at becoming more eloquent, more smooth, modulating tone.
Yep.
None of it's an accident. Every minutiae of it, much the same as nailing that photo and being able to post-produce in 60 seconds, I have deconstructed every facet of it that I'm currently aware of and then tried to work on every tiny little part.
Better it every time.
Every time.
Yeah.
Because I've got like this dream as well. Mate, I want to do a guest spot on Bluey in the kids show. Yeah. Right, because I've had people come up to me out in public and go, mate, are you Bluey's dad? Do you do the voice for Bluey's dad? Okay. Gonna hammer barn. And like, mate, I would bloody love to be the bogan uncle on an episode of Bluey. Like,
I can see that happening.
Mate, if anybody knows anybody anywhere to get me in there, I'm like all in to voice act an episode of Bluey. I doubt that I would have a higher moment in my life than to be immortalised in that glorious show based here in Brisbane. But this is the thing, again, if you aim at that and go, that's so unachievable. That is so unachievable to be a voice actor in what has become, a global phenomenon.
Yeah.
But if you aim for that, you will still find yourself in an incredible place. Whether or not that happens, and it's definitely going to happen, but whether or not that happens, if you aim for that place, you'll still end up somewhere extraordinary.
Oh, definitely. Yeah. I think not a doubt in my mind that you gotta set those goals. But yeah, I can definitely see you just rolling in there on that. I was going to say the set is a cartoon.
You'd just be standing in a box. You're standing in a studio.
You got to dress
in front of the
mate.
microphone.
Tape that tail on.
Absolutely. I'd tape the tail on, I'd be wearing my Crocs, and I would hope that the cartoon dog version of me would be wearing Crocs, a Live in the Dream t-shirt, and drive a 1997 ELXR6 Barra, and have that turn up out the front of the house.
A little bit of smoke.
Yeah, and big dose as it turns up. And go, it's old Uncle Bogan. Go, g'day kids, how we going? What's happening, boys? Anyone want to do a fat lap in the Barra? Just the best ever. Like, this is my dream.
I can see your name too.
I would love to
Uncle
be
Croc with his Crocs on.
Oh, Uncle Croc. See, we're even developing the character. And I don't know him, but I know a fella that does some of the voice acting on the show. And I actually reached out to him for like pointers on becoming a better voice actor. And his advice to me, because he said to me, he said, a lot of people ask me, how do I get into voice acting? And he said, it's not the glamorous, easy money making that people think it is. Like anything, it is astonishing volumes of work. It's a decade of commitment. And then maybe if you're lucky, you might get one or two bangers coming out. But you've actually just got to love using your voice to create expression, tonality, mood, all those sorts of things. And I'm like, pro tips. And that's what it is. I'm just trying to enjoy voice acting and going, again, if I can think in that way, because if you ask somebody who's, refined the art, same way that you've deconstructed what you do, you just ask somebody that has done it and they're there doing it. He's literally one of the voice actors on the show, and he has told me that that's the path. And I go, cool, do that.
Yeah, we're just filling in the dots then, aren't you?
Absolutely.
It's stabbing in the dark.
No.
Yeah.
And if that doesn't work, I'll just like MS Paint my own show and I'll voice act that bad boy. What could possibly go wrong there? It's Uncle Croc and his barrow. Oh, God, now I've got to make this. Just imagine this guy's adventures.
Get the falcon.
Hey, kids, do you know what a number 11 is? Uncle Croc will show you. Yeah, pull my finger. Because it's pretty much just my life. And all the things that, like, the other parents that come around, they're like, I was doing that the other day to one of the kids that was there, one of our friends. And I was, like, talking to her little guy, and I was like, buddy, do you know what that means? And you go, pull my finger. And she's like, did not teach him that. And I'm like,
oh, it's got to be done.
And I said to my boy, I'm like, what's up, Ian? And I said, when I taught my boy that, I'm like, mate, I've got nothing to teach you between now and teaching you to drive.
I'm out.
This is me. Like, that was a glorious moment when the young bloke, and you just pointed at him, and he knows, mate, he knows.
The passing of the baton.
Mate, the passing of the baton. It's the fart game, son. You'll play one day. Like, it's the best.
And be a good person.
And be a good person, mate. Kindness and manners. Look, we have meandered to all sorts of ridiculous places. Would you believe that we have been banging on for just under 3 hours?
That's too much.
That's a lot.
Yeah, you can't cut this down, can you?
Nah, mate.
What's done is done.
Mate, what's done is done. I just chop it and send it. This is part of the magic, I think.
C'est la vie.
C'est la vie. Because I don't want to produce something that is dishonest. I don't want to edit it. I don't want to, it starts, it ends, and then a whole other pile of things happen in the middle. All I can control is the start and finish points.
It was a good ride.
Everything else is a circus. Mate, I've had a fucking great conversation.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun, actually.
I actually really want to see your studio too, so I'll just create myself an invitation, because I would like to see this place that I now have a visualisation of, as you have explained it with words.
Yeah, well, we got the one in Brisbane and there's another one in Tassie too.
Yeah, well, the Tassie one's a bit far. I tried to get there a few months ago, but that didn't work real well.
Yeah, well, we missed you, boy. Well, I think I was packing up to come back.
Yeah, correct. Yeah, you were moving through, and
that house is a lot prettier than this one.
It's a good looking house. I've seen the photos of that, but I don't really care about that. I just want to see the space.
Yeah, you can come and see the Technicolor
I want to see that. I want to see like the explosion of artwork in that space.
Oh, it's a lovely little house. It's taller than it is wide. So it's got a lot of ceiling height, but not much floor space.
Kind of like the new Aston Martin 4-wheel drive. It's taller than it is wide. Sorry, that popped in my mind when we were talking about like mucking up the aesthetic. Yeah, I saw one of those on the weekend, and I'm like, they've literally taken like a Vantage and just like gone in Photoshop and grabbed the corner and like stretched it up.
I haven't seen it.
Oh, mate.
But you know what threw me though too was those Genesis ones. I thought that was Aston Martin badging for so long.
Yeah.
And I go, what? They've really changed their tact, and then I realised that it's completely different.
Mate, that's straight out of Korea. That's K-Town.
Right.
If I recall my brands correctly.
Yeah. But like the branding from a distance for me just looked so similar for some reason. I don't know.
I did have somebody see my Tickford badge on my hand and assumed I'd bought an Aston Martin. I'm like, nah, I think people just like that look, but no, brother, that's Tickford. Right, I'm going to wind this up because otherwise we're just going to keep saying silly things. Mr. John Wren, if people want to follow you, your art, your journey around the internet, where can they catch you and your things?
Easiest one is John Wren Art. So the Wren's like the bluebird, WREN. There's also a website which is exactly the same. And yeah, I update pretty much on a weekly basis with new work. So I'm constantly pumping out stuff. That'll take you to links too for all the different booze, or I shouldn't say booze, but delicious wines, gins, record labels, everything your heart could
Wonderful
desire.
commercial partners.
Yes. Yeah.
In every
They're
direction.
brilliant people. Also brilliant products, they too.
Mm.
So and they look good now. They've got a bit of art on
Mate,
top.
absolutely. It adds a bit of razzle-dazzle that wouldn't have been there otherwise. It helps to magnify the experience of the art. So they can find you at John Wren Art.
Correct.
Is that your at handles as well?
At handle for John Wren Art, ART, and same with the website is www.johnwrenart.com.
Are you on the TikToks and the YouTubes?
I'm not yet that way inclined, but I feel like...
You're showing your middle age here, mate.
Look, it seems to be the thing. I'm just not into that dancing yet.
Mate, that's gone.
Oh, is it?
That was like 4 years ago.
Oh, okay.
Nobody's dancing anymore.
Oh, right, okay. Well, maybe I'll...
If I was you, I'd bring it back.
The dancing.
Yeah. In the studio. Flicking paint everywhere.
The middle-aged saw back kind of stomp waddle dance that is now in vogue.
Actually, what's the one that they're memeing at the moment? Justin Timberlake. Yeah, they're memeing the shit out of him at the moment because of some dance he did, and he actually did look like middle-aged dad. That
Really?
shouldn't be dancing. They were not great moves. So, yeah, basically, you can capitalise on that.
Yeah.
There you go. Pro tips.
He's
for
good
free.
though, isn't he, with his Maggie Noodle haircut?
Yeah, the best. See, we've done it again. We've gone down there. Mr. John Wren, thank you. This has been sensational. I have enjoyed the shit out of this, in particular the lengthy Jaguar discussion. Thank you for making the time. Thank you for the invitation to Prologue. And if you're listening to this in the immediate future, can people zip along and have a look at the gallery?
Yeah, we're still up and running at Newstead Studios for the next week.
So what's the date range? When will that conclude?
24th Friday, we're bumping out.
Friday, the 24th of November in the year 2023. So if you're listening to it after that, tough biscuits, you missed it. On that note, I'm going to wrap this up. Somebody said to me the other day, I need a sign-off. I don't really have one, and I don't know how to do that, and I start having Anchorman-like thoughts. But I think what they were sort of telling me to do was, I'll catch you next time on the next episode of All Read Everything. Something like that?
Beautiful.
Close enough?
Yeah. And then the end.
The end. No, I can't finish
No bugs?
on the end.
No bugs on the end of it?
No. The only other thing I'm going to tell you, choose kindness. Catch you next time, legends.